Grant held the envelope out to Mara as if he were giving her the receipt for something she had already returned. "The little key is for the cabin," he said. "The other thing is the address plate." Behind him, Owen stood at their grandfather's kitchen sink, rinsing 3 coffee cups that were already clean. The farmhouse still smelled like funeral lilies and Walter Bell's menthol chest rub. Someone had left half-a-pound cake under its plastic dome, one careful slice missing. Mara took the envelope. A brass key slid into her palm, followed by a white metal plate with black raised numbers. 118 Bell Orchard Lane. She looked from the plate to Grant. "The cabin has an address?" "Apparently." "It has a separate address?" Grant tucked Walter's house key onto his own ring. "That should make things easier." "For whom?" Mara almost asked. Through the kitchen window, beyond the barn roof, and the upper branches of the orchard, she could just see the dark shape of the cabin. Walter had sent her out there 100 times for pruning shears, empty bushel baskets, or the dented kettle he claimed made cider taste better. He had never once called it a house. Grant reached past her and turned the deadbolt on the farmhouse door, testing it. The new lock made a small, expensive click. 6 hours earlier, Mara had stood at the foot of Walter's grave, trying to keep her heels from sinking into the wet ground. She had bought the shoes at a thrift store on Tuesday because her only black pair had a cracked sole. Mud climbed the narrow heels anyway, thick and red-brown, the same color as the soil Walter used to crumble between his fingers before deciding whether it was time to plant. The preacher had called Walter dependable. Grant had nodded solemnly. Owen had cried with his face turned down. Mara had watched rain collect along the polished edge of the casket and thought about the plastic hospital cup still sitting beside Walter's bed. It had a green straw bent toward the place his mouth had been. She had meant to throw it away before people came to the house, but the funeral home arrived early. Then the casserole dishes started coming. Then Grant asked where Walter kept his blue suit. Dependable seemed too clean a word. Walter had been stubborn and suspicious of microwaves. He saved bacon grease in a mug marked "World's Best Grandpa," though no grandchild had bought it for him. He had once driven 9 miles to complain about a 50-cent overcharge, then tipped the waitress $5 because she looked tired. He had also spent the last 3 nights of his life calling Mara by her mother's name. At the cemetery, Grant put an arm around her shoulders after the service. Anyone watching would have thought he was holding her up. In truth, he leaned close and said, "Lawyer's meeting us at the house in 40 minutes. Mara glanced at Owen. "He thinks we should get it settled while everybody's here," Owen said. "The dirt's still open." Grant's hand tightened once on her shoulder. "It's just the reading." There was no dramatic reading. The lawyer, a tired woman named Ms. Hensley, sat at Walter's kitchen table with a scuffed leather folder and read plain sentences while rain ticked against the windows. Grant and Owen received the farmhouse jointly, along with the barn and the field that ran east to County Road 9. Walter's truck went to Owen. His tractor went to Grant. The savings account was divided evenly among all 3 of them, though after funeral expenses and Walter's final bills, Ms. Hensley warned, there would not be much. Mara received the cabin and the orchard around it. Ms. Hensley named the acreage. Mara heard the number but couldn't hold on to it. She was looking at a pale ring on the table where Walter's coffee mug had always sat. Grant asked 2 questions about the property taxes. Owen asked whether Walter had left instructions about his tools. Mara asked, "Did he say why?" Ms. Hensley looked at the page, then at Mara. "The will doesn't include personal explanations." "I know, but did he ever say anything to you?" "No." Grant shifted in his chair. His funeral suit pulled tight across his shoulders. "You're the one who likes the orchard." Mara turned to him. "I like the farmhouse too." "I didn't mean you didn't. I've been living here." That caused the silence she should have expected. Not shock, not sympathy. A practical silence, the kind people made when someone mentioned a stain on a ceiling and everybody calculated the cost of fixing it. "You've been staying here," Grant said finally, "for 14 months, to help Grandpa." "Yes, and we're grateful." Owen lowered his eyes to the paperwork. Mara wanted him to look up. Owen had always been the one who noticed when Grant went too far. As a teenager, he used to knock on her bedroom wall after an argument, 3 soft taps meaning, "Don't listen to him." He could make disapproval feel like loyalty as long as he never had to say it aloud. Grant opened his hands. "Nobody's putting you on the street, Mara. You have the cabin." Ms. Hensley capped her pen with a quiet snap. After she left, neighbors carried away empty crockpots and promised to call. Grant's wife, Denise, kissed Mara's cheek, said, "You know you can come stay with us if you need a night or two," and then asked Grant whether he had measured the front room for their sectional. By 4:30, the house held only the three siblings and the peculiar mess of a life becoming objects. Walter's suspenders hung from a chair. His hearing aid batteries waited in a cereal bowl. A stack of sympathy cards leaned beside three envelopes from the electric company, all addressed in the rigid block letters of people who had stopped seeing the name years ago. Mara carried her duffel from Walter's bedroom to the kitchen. Grant had begun opening windows despite the cold. "You don't have to do this today," Owen said. She looked at the duffel in her hand. "Which part?" "Move all your stuff. All my stuff fits in this bag." "That's not true." He nodded toward the hall closet. Her winter coat hung there. Her work shoes were beside the back door. A blue ceramic mug she had owned since community college sat in the dish drainer. Grant came in carrying a cardboard box marked Denise, Christmas. "We need to change the locks before contractors start coming through." Mara stared at him. "Contractors?" "For the upstairs bathroom. There's damage under the tub. Grandpa said it could wait." Grandpa put a roasting pan under a leak and called that plumbing. Despite herself, Mara almost smiled. Walter had called it preventative architecture. Owen did smile, briefly. Grant saw them and looked irritated, as though they had become children at the wrong moment. "Denise and I have been talking," he said. "We might use the place on weekends at first. Fix it up right." "What about you?" Mara asked Owen. He shrugged. "I don't need much." Grant set the box on Walter's chair. "The point is, we have to get organized. It's not personal." Mara's gaze moved to the flowery fingerprints still visible on the pantry door. She had made biscuits 2 mornings before Walter stopped eating. Nothing in the kitchen looked organized. It looked interrupted. "Where am I supposed to sleep tonight?" Grant glanced toward the orchard. That was how she learned gratitude had an expiration time. Now, with the envelope open in her hand, she ran her thumb over the raised numbers on the address plate. "Why did it need its own address?" she asked. Grant sighed, not angrily at first. More like a man presented with one extra form at the end of a long day. Probably for deliveries. Grandpa ordered parts all the time, to the farmhouse. Then I don't know. Owen shut off the faucet. Maybe Grandma used it for the orchard business. What orchard business? He dried his hands on a dish towel. She sold things out there. Apples. Jelly, I think. You think? We were young. Mara had been 7 when Ruth Bell died. Her memories were scraps that might have belonged to photographs, a red bandana over silver hair, cool fingers testing Mara's forehead, the smell of cinnamon and something sharper, vinegar maybe. Ruth existed in family stories, mostly as Walter's wife, a woman praised for feeding people and surviving his moods. Grant checked his phone. The cabin's been closed up for years. I'd air it out before dark. "Good advice," Mara said. He looked at her then. "Don't make me the bad guy. I didn't make you anything. We didn't write the will." "No. You just changed the locks. We all heard what Ms. Hensley said, that the house belongs to you. She didn't say I had to be out before Grandpa's grave was filled." Owen folded the towel into smaller and smaller squares. Mara. The way he said her name asked her to lower the temperature of the room. Owen had always believed peace was something the most hurt person should provide. Grant's mouth hardened. "Keep the old key tonight if it makes you feel better. It won't work tomorrow." The cruelty of it seemed to surprise even him. He looked away first. Mara set the address plate back in the envelope. "Keep it." "What?" "The old key." She took her coat from the hall closet, shoved her feet into muddy shoes, and lifted the duffel. Owen reached for it. "I've got it. At least let me take a box." "There isn't a box." She stopped at the kitchen doorway. Walter's chair was almost hidden behind Denise's Christmas decorations. For one absurd second, Mara imagined him beneath the cardboard, grumbling that somebody had blocked his view of the bird feeder. She went back, picked up her blue mug from the dish drainer, and carried it out with her. The rain had dwindled to a cold mist. She crossed behind the barn, where Walter's tractor sat under its lean-to, with a spray of funeral mud dried along the rear tire. Beyond it, the orchard spread down the slope in uneven rows. At a distance, the trees looked dead. Up close, their black branches held tight reddish buds. Walter had shown her the difference in February. Dead wood snapped, living wood bent. Mara followed the rutted lane, her duffel bumping against her leg. Owen caught up near the first row of pear trees, carrying the cardboard box from the truck without asking. "What's in there?" she said. "Sheets, a flashlight, that little electric kettle from the pantry. That's Grandpa's." He left the kettle to the house, technically. She glanced at him. Owen gave a guilty half grin. "I'm stealing from myself." The cabin emerged from behind a line of overgrown cedar, smaller than Mara remembered. Its porch sagged at the left corner. Green moss climbed the steps, and one shutter hung by a single hinge. Above the door, 4 rusted screw holes marked the place where something rectangular had once been mounted. Mara pulled the address plate from the envelope and held it against the faded wood. The holes matched. Owen saw it too. "Huh," he said. She waited for more. He shifted the box in his arms. "Want me to try the key?" The lock resisted, then opened with a sound like a cough. Cold, stale air rolled out. Their flashlight beam found a wood stove, a narrow iron bed, and a table buried beneath coils of twine. Mouse droppings speckled the counters. A brown water stain spread across the ceiling directly above the bed. Owen stood in the doorway. "You can't sleep here." "Grant thinks I can. He doesn't know what it looks like. He knew enough to change the locks." "Mara, come home with me tonight." Home, for Owen, was a 1-bedroom apartment above an insurance office in town. He owned 2 plates and a couch that folded only if kicked. The offer was sincere. That almost made it worse. She set her mug on the dusty table. "I'm tired of staying in places where somebody can decide when I'm done," she said. Owen's face changed, but before he could answer, rainwater struck the metal sink with a bright, solitary ping. Then another. Mara looked up at the spreading stain. Owen cleared his throat. "I brought a bucket, too." She laughed. She did not mean to. The sound came out bent in the middle, and Owen laughed with her, both of them standing in a freezing cabin on the day they buried their grandfather. When the laughter stopped, he placed the bucket beneath the leak. "I'll come back in the morning," he said. "Okay, with tools. Bring coffee. I stole the kettle. There's no electricity." He looked toward the dead ceiling fixture. Right. After he left, Mara watched his shape move through the orchard until the gray swallowed him. Far uphill, lamps came on inside the farmhouse one by one. Kitchen, hall, Walter's bedroom. Mara shut the cabin door. In the flashlight beam, the white address plate waited on the table beside her blue mug. She picked it up and fitted it over the 4 old holes above the door, holding it there with one hand. Someone had taken it down. Someone else had saved it. And Walter, who labeled jars of screws but had left no explanation for dividing his family this way, had made certain it reached her. Mara found 2 screws in a coffee tin beneath the sink, but neither fit. One was too short, the other stripped smooth at the head. She set the plate on the porch with the intention of dealing with it in daylight, then brought it back inside because leaving it out felt careless. The cabin had electricity in the archaeological sense. Cloth-wrapped wire ran along the rafters. A ceramic light switch clicked up and down with crisp authority, producing nothing. When Mara turned the sink faucet, the pipe shuddered inside the wall and gave her 3 drops of orange water. She spread Owen's sheets over the mattress without looking too closely at what they covered. The water stain above the bed had begun dripping faster, so she dragged the mattress onto the floor near the stove and arranged 2 pots beside the bucket. Walter's old wool coat hung from a peg. It smelled of cedar chips and damp dust, not of Walter, but she wore it anyway. Her phone showed 11% battery and 2 missed calls from Denise. The first voicemail was gentle. "Mara, honey, Grant told me there was some confusion. I just want you to know nobody expects you to solve everything tonight. We can put your things in the barn until you figure out your next step." The second arrived 9 minutes later. "Also, do you remember where your granddad kept the upstairs bathroom towels? Not the brown ones? The decent blue set?" Mara deleted both messages. She tried to light the wood stove, but the damper was frozen and smoke curled out around the door. Walter had stopped using it after a chimney fire scorched the roof. Mara remembered Grant shouting at him for climbing a ladder at 78, and Walter shouting back that 78 wasn't a diagnosis. She let the fire die rather than becoming the second bell to prove a point with carbon monoxide. The cold settled on her slowly. She wore 2 pairs of socks, curled beneath Owen's stolen sheets and Walter's coat, and watched the farmhouse windows through the bare trees. At 10:30, the light came on in Walter's bedroom. It remained on for almost an hour. Mara pictured Denise standing at the dresser, opening drawers where Walter had kept handkerchiefs, receipts, and hard peppermint candies stuck together by age. She pictured Grant measuring the bathroom while the towels he wanted sat in the washing machine, still sour from the last load Mara had forgotten to move before the hospice nurse called. She rolled away from the window. Something scratched inside the wall. "If you're bigger than a squirrel, we have to discuss rent," she whispered. The scratching stopped. Her laughter did not come this time. By 1 in the morning, her phone was dead. By 3, every root in her mouth hurt from the cold. Rain tapped the metal sink, paused, then resumed in some new spot, as if the roof were thinking. She woke to a knock and the smell of coffee. Owen pushed the door open with his shoulder. He carried 2 paper cups in a drink tray, a red toolbox, and a grocery bag looped around his wrist. His hair was wet and flattened on one side. "You look terrible," he said. "So did Grandpa at his funeral. Nobody mentioned it?" "I did privately." She sat up, the wool coat falling from her shoulder. The cabin had grown marginally brighter, but no warmer. Owen handed her a cup. "I got you oatmeal. I don't like oatmeal. I know." The other choice was an egg sandwich, and by the time I ordered, I remembered you don't like their eggs. "So you bought something else I don't like?" It was a high-pressure situation. The coffee was too hot and perfect. Mara wrapped both hands around it. Owen opened the toolbox. "I brought a drill, screws, extension cords, and one of those outlet tester things." "Is that its technical name?" The electrician at the hardware store knew what I meant. He crouched beside the dead outlet. Owen repaired commercial refrigerators for a company in Ashboro and treated household wiring with the wary respect of a man who understood exactly how much he did not know. "Grant called," Mara said. "No, he didn't. Denise did." "That sounds more accurate." She offered me the barn. Owen stopped with the tester in his hand. "I'm going to choose to believe she meant for storage." She did. Probably. Mara. "What?" "You do this thing where you say something awful like, 'It's funny,' and then I'm supposed to know whether I'm allowed to be mad. You're always allowed. You just prefer private appointments." He looked down at the tester. "That's fair." She had expected a defense. Without one, her anger lost its clean edge. Owen worked the outlet cover loose. Behind it, the wires looked brittle enough to crumble. "We need an electrician. We need money." "You're getting some from the estate." "Eventually," Ms. Hensley said, "bills come out first. I can cover an electrician." "No, it's power, not a hot tub." "No." He sat back on his heels. "All right, we'll run a cord from the barn until you can afford it. Across the lane, we'll get a heavy outdoor one. Grant will love that. Grant owns half a barn. I own the other half. You gonna tell him?" Owen studied her over the rim of his coffee. "Yes." "When?" "Before he sees the cord." "How long before?" "Several minutes, ideally." Mara smiled in spite of herself. The morning became a list. Roof leak, chimney inspection, water line, broken window latch, rot along the porch rail, a mouse nest inside the lower cupboard, constructed partly from an old grocery circular advertising peaches at 39 cents a pound. Owen wore work gloves and carried the nest outside. "Eviction already?" Mara said. That was fast. No separate address on their mail. He found the cabin's metal electrical box behind a cedar trunk, half hidden by vines. The meter had been removed, leaving a round glassless socket like an empty eye. "This wasn't connected to the barn," he said. "It had its own service." Mara came down the porch steps. "Can it be turned back on?" "Probably, after somebody says it won't kill you." She brushed wet leaves from the box. A small aluminum tag below the socket showed the same number as the address plate. 118. Owen touched it with one finger. "Grandma really did run something out here, so everybody keeps saying." "What do you remember?" "Her apron. She hated aprons. She had a yellow one. That was Grandpa's barbecue apron. It said, 'Kiss the cook.'" Mara looked at him. "My best memory of Grandma? Is Grandpa dressed for a cookout? You were 7. I thought she had big hands. She did have big hands." He held both of his out, wide-palmed and square-fingered. Ruth's hands, perhaps. Walter used to say, Owen could palm a dinner plate. Mara looked toward the orchard. Morning mist clung between the trees. Walter had planted in rows, but decades had softened them. Some trunks leaned, others split low into 2 competing halves. Wild blackberry canes snarled around the outer trees, and fallen apples from the previous autumn lay brown and sunken beneath the grass. "What does Grant remember?" she asked. "About Grandma? About any of this?" Owen shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. "More than he acts like." A truck horn sounded from uphill. Grant's pickup crawled down the lane, tires sinking into the soft ruts. A plastic-wrapped ladder extended over the tailgate. Denise sat beside him, holding a travel mug. Grant stopped short of the cabin and lowered his window. "You mind moving Owen's car?" he called. "Delivery truck's coming at 10. Owen had parked beside the barn, leaving enough room for a tractor. "What delivery?" Mara asked. "Drywall. For the bathroom?" Grant nodded toward the address plate lying on the table inside. "You get settled? The power's disconnected." "Yeah. Grandpa cut it off years ago." "You knew?" "I knew it didn't have lights. Last night you told me to air it out. You didn't mention I'd be sleeping in a refrigerator." Denise leaned toward Grant to see past him. Her blonde hair was pinned back, funeral neatness replaced by a bright green headband. "Mara, I called you. About towels. I called about your things. I heard both." Grant put the truck in park but left the engine running. "Look, nobody told you that you had to sleep here last night. You changed the locks. I said you could keep the old key. You said it wouldn't work today." Denise's mouth tightened. "This is exactly the kind of misunderstanding I hoped we could avoid." Owen stepped down from the porch. "I'm running power from the barn until she gets her own service restored." Grant stared at him. "Across my lane? Our lane. That's not safe. It'll be safe. Contractors will be driving over it. Then they can take the field entrance." Grant laughed once. "I'm not sending a drywall truck through mud because Mara wants to prove she can camp out here." Mara descended the last step. Walter's coat hung past her knees, and Owen's paper cup warmed one hand. "I want to plug in a kettle." "I know this is hard," Grant said, "for all of us." Denise reached across and touched his arm, a small gesture Mara might once have found loving. Grant went on. "You don't have to decide your whole life today. Stay with Owen, stay with us if you want. We'll clear out the downstairs office." "As what?" "A bedroom. For how long?" He did not answer quickly enough. Mara nodded. "Until I sell?" Grant's jaw shifted. Nobody said that, not out loud. "The orchard doesn't make sense on its own. You know that." She looked past the truck at the trees. "Grandma made it work. That was 40 years ago. People also rented televisions." Owen snorted. Grant pointed at him. "Don't. Sorry. It was historically insightful." Denise looked away, fighting a smile. For a second, all four of them occupied some older arrangement, Grant pompous, Owen needling him, Mara waiting for the laugh. Then the truck's engine changed pitch, and the moment went with it. Grant rested both hands on the wheel. "I'm saying we should be practical. If you sell your section to us, the property stays together. You get cash to start over somewhere that isn't falling down." "Cash from where?" "We'll figure that out." "With the money you're putting into drywall?" His face reddened. Mara had not meant the question as a weapon until it landed. Denise straightened in her seat. "We're trying to keep the farmhouse from deteriorating. And I'm trying to keep rain off my bed. You chose to sleep there." Grant spoke before Mara could. "Enough. We have people coming. Owen, move your car." He put the truck in gear. "Grant," Owen said. The truck paused. "I'm running the cord." Grant looked at his brother for a long moment. Then he drove uphill without replying, the ladder bouncing over the ruts. Owen watched until the truck disappeared behind the barn. "That was public," Mara said. "Don't get used to it." They installed the address plate first. Owen held it level while Mara drove in the screws. The drill jumped when it bit the old cedar, and the right side ended up slightly higher. "We can redo it," he said. "No, it's crooked. So are the porch and the trees, and the owner." She bumped him with her shoulder. They ran the extension cord along the edge of the lane, threading it beneath the grass where tires would not cross. Owen plugged it into the barn, and the orange line carried a thin, improbable current down the hill. Inside the cabin, Mara filled the kettle from a gallon jug. When she pressed the switch, its little red light came on. Neither of them spoke. The cabin remained cold, wet, and full of mice. The roof still leaked, the pipes still held rust. But the kettle began its low electric murmur, and Mara felt the room change around that ordinary sound. Owen opened the upper cupboard, looking for cups. He pulled out a warped wooden crate instead. Faded blue letters showed beneath the grime. Mara set her coffee down. Behind the crate, written directly on the pantry wall in pencil, were dates, numbers, and names she did not yet understand. Some entries were crossed out. Others had small circles beside them. At the bottom, in darker writing, someone had added, Stamen, North Row, still good. She knew that hand. Walter had written it the previous fall. Mara touched the pencil with the pad of her thumb. The words did not smear. He was out here last fall, she said. Owen leaned closer to the pantry wall. You brought him? No. You sure that's his writing? He labeled everything in the freezer. I spent half of January looking at beef soup, too salty. Walter's capital letters tilted forward as though impatient with the pencil. Mara could picture his hand around it, knuckles swollen, thumbnail flattened from some long-ago hammer blow. By the previous fall, he needed both hands to lift a saucepan. He had still found a way down the orchard slope without telling her. Maybe it's older, Owen said. The pencil mark is over the grease stain. He nodded as if that settled a known system of cabin archaeology. The wall held years of entries. Ruth's writing was smaller and rounder, sometimes reduced to a variety name and a row number, wine sap, russet, yellow transparent. Beside other names, she had recorded quantities in bushels and half bushels. Some years ended with a total enclosed in a box. Later entries grew sparse. Walter's additions appeared in darker pencil between hers, blunt assessments scattered across time. Weak, lightning, bees late, good after freeze. Mara took pictures with Owen's phone because hers remained dead. The wall was too large to capture at once. He stood on the lower cupboard to photograph the upper section, nearly stepped into the kettle, and blamed Ruth for failing to design a safe archival facility. She probably didn't expect her grocery lists to be studied by two idiots, Mara said. One idiot. I'm providing technical support. They carried the crate into the light. Its bottom had softened with damp, but the blue lettering remained visible. Inside were folded picking bags, a rusted hand scale, and a ledger whose pages had swollen together. Mara eased the cover open. The first page tore at the binding. Stop, Owen said. I barely touched it. You have the hands of a dock worker. You have Grandma's dinner plates. He took the ledger from her and placed it flat on the table. Let it dry. Beneath it lay a stack of order slips. The paper had yellowed to the color of weak tea. Names and telephone numbers filled the lines, along with orders for apple butter, pear preserves, cider, and something abbreviated HP husband poison, Owen suggested. Hot pepper. That was my second guess. The old slips were not worth anything. Mara knew that immediately, before Hope could perform one of its cheap tricks. Most of the phone numbers had only 7 digits. Several customers were surely dead. The cabin had not concealed salvation behind a wooden crate. Still, the papers altered the scale of the room. She looked at the counters and imagined them crowded with jars. The rusted sink had once been used hard enough to justify its own water line. The porch had held people waiting with empty boxes in their arms. Walter had not given her a shed. He had given her a failed business. She laughed into her hands. What? Owen asked. Nothing. It's just getting better. He understood after a second. You don't have to do what they did. I can't even make toast. You can make toast. Not in here. We have one extension cord. I brought a power strip. Then I'm an industrialist. The kettle clicked off. They drank powdered cocoa from her blue mug and Walter's old enamel cup because Owen had forgotten tea bags. While they worked, the drywall truck arrived uphill. Its brakes squealed near the barn, followed by Grant's voice directing men who had probably delivered drywall without him before. Owen checked the cabin window. You can go help, Mara said. He didn't ask. You're staring. I'm monitoring. Privately. He turned from the window. You have $8 of cocoa on your upper lip. Mara wiped it away with Walter's coat sleeve. By noon, they had cleared enough floor to see the pattern in the old linoleum. Owen sealed the broken window latch with duct tape and climbed onto the porch roof to spread a tarp over the leak. Mara carried rotten cardboard and mouse-chewed cloth to a burn pile, but set the crates and papers on the table to dry. Owen left after extracting a promise that she would sleep at his apartment if the temperature dropped below freezing. He phrased it as a weather emergency plan, which allowed them both to pretend it was not an invitation she had already refused. When his car disappeared, the cabin became too quiet. Mara plugged in her phone. The screen lit after several minutes. 2:14 p.m., 4% charged, bank balance notification, waiting. $83.17. She sat on the edge of the mattress. Walter's final month had consumed the last of what she had saved from her job at the distribution center. She had quit after missing too many shifts, though the official paperwork said voluntary separation. It was easier than telling a manager she could not leave her grandfather alone when he believed strangers were moving through the walls. She had expected grief to be expensive. Funeral clothes, gas, aspirin, the kind of takeout ordered when the refrigerator held food but nobody could bear to combine it. She had not expected it to come with a utility deposit. Mara called the electric company. The woman who answered asked for the service address. Mara looked at the white plate now mounted above the door. 118 Bell Orchard Lane. The woman found it after a pause. The account had been inactive for 26 years. Restoring service required an inspection, a new meter base, and a deposit based on Mara's credit history. The woman listed 3 electrical contractors who serviced the area, then asked if Mara wanted the billing address to be the same as the service address. Mara glanced around at the mattress on the floor, the bucket collecting brown roof water, and Ruth's swollen ledger. Yes, she said. She wrote the contractor numbers on the back of an old order slip, called all 3, and learned that merely asking an electrician to look at a problem cost more money than she had. Then she searched for jobs. The distribution center had an opening on the night shift, but the application required availability from 6 in the evening until 4 in the morning. She could do it, though the thought of walking down Orchard Lane alone before dawn made the cabin feel even farther from the world. A home care company wanted certification she did not have. A grocery store wanted open weekend availability and offered 16 hours. The listing for Bellwether Diner consisted of one sentence posted 11 weeks earlier. Early server needed. Apply in person. People skills helpful. Mara looked down at Walter's coat. People skills, she told the mouse in the wall, are why I live alone. She washed at the cabin sink using water warmed in the kettle and changed in the dry corner near the stove. Her thrift store funeral shoes were hopeless, so she wore work boots with black pants and a gray sweater. The sweater had a faint bleach mark near the hem. She colored it with a pencil, disliked the result, and tucked the hem under. The diner sat 12 miles away in the town of Bellwether, between an auto parts store and a laundromat whose sign had lost the letters L and D. A chrome bell jingled when Mara entered. 3 men at the counter looked up at once, assessed her, and returned to their pie. The woman behind the register had white hair cut close around her ears and glasses on a beaded chain. Her name tag said, Phyllis, in letters decorated with tiny red apples. We're not hiring, she said. The sign online says you are. The sign online also says we close at 8. We haven't closed at 8 since my gallbladder surgery. When was that? 2019. Mara rested both hands on the counter. Could you still use somebody for mornings? Phyllis looked her over. Experience? Some. Some means no. I waited tables at the Riverside Grill for 11 months. Why'd you leave? The owner kept part of our tips. Did you report him? I poured bacon grease into the lock on his truck. Phyllis removed her glasses. I was 19, Mara said. I'd report him now. Would you? I might use less grease. One of the men at the counter coughed pie into his napkin. Phyllis studied her for another moment. Walter Bell. Your grandfather? The question made Mara straighten. Yes. I heard he passed. Thursday. And here you are asking for work on Saturday. I was unemployed on Wednesday too. Phyllis's expression changed without becoming softer. Your grandmother used to bring preserves in here. Hot pear, mean stuff. Cleared your nose from the next table. HP. Did she sell much? Enough that she complained about being tired. Not enough that she stopped. Phyllis picked up a pencil and tapped its eraser on the register. You available at 5 in the morning? There's only one 5 that concerns a diner. Yes. Monday. Wear black shoes you can stand in. Not those boots unless you want your feet to file for divorce. Does that mean I have the job? It means you have Monday. Don't build a retirement plan around it. Mara drove back with $6 less than she had before because the gas gauge had touched empty. Clouds pressed low over the fields. When she reached the farm, she saw a raised strip of black rubber laid across the lane where the extension cord passed beneath it. A contractor's cable protector, heavy enough for a truck to drive over. Owen's car was gone. Grant's pickup remained beside the house. Mara walked uphill. Grant was alone in the barn, cutting open a package of drop cloths with Walter's pocket knife. Her grandfather had sharpened that knife so often its blade curved inward like a thin moon. "You covered the cord," she said. Grant kept cutting. Drywall truck nearly caught it. "You could have unplugged it." "I considered it." The honesty stopped her. He folded the plastic and set it aside. "Denise says I handled this morning badly. Denise thinks putting someone in an office makes them furniture." His mouth twitched, then flattened. "She's trying. So am I." Grant looked toward the orchard, though the cabin was hidden from inside the barn. What did the electric company say? Mara had not told him she called, that the service can be restored after an inspection. "Meter box is ancient, I know. Roof needs flashing around the chimney. Porch beam's gone at the corner. Your water probably comes off the old orchard well, and I doubt the pump works." Each fact landed like another bill. "Are you trying to help?" she asked. "I'm trying to tell you what you've got." "No, you're telling me what I can't do, so I'll make the decision you want." Grant pushed Walter's knife closed. "You think Grandpa did you a kindness?" Mara felt the question beneath the question and hated that she wanted him to answer it. "What do you think he did?" Grant placed the knife in his pocket. "I think," he said carefully, "he knew you'd take whatever work he left you and call it love." For one suspended second, he looked sorry. Then Denise called his name from the house, and he turned away. Mara followed him into the barn. "Was that supposed to make me feel better?" Grant set the drop cloths on Walter's workbench. "No." "Then what was it supposed to do?" "Make you think. I've had plenty of time for that. The cabin doesn't have heat." He pressed both hands to the bench and looked down at them. "You think I don't know what you did for him. I don't know what you know. You came on Sundays, fixed one thing, and left before he got confused. I came when I could. You came when he knew your name." Grant's head lifted. Mara wished the sentence back, not because it was false, but because it was exactly true. He closed his eyes briefly. "The last time I came alone, he asked me why I'd sold the north pasture. I told him we never owned a north pasture. He called me a liar and tried to hit me with his cane. He hit me too. You never said that." What was I supposed to say? Grandpa's getting worse? Everybody knew. There were places that could have helped. He wanted to be home. He wanted a lot of things. The barn held the smell of motor oil, wet hay, and the cold iron scent of tools. Walter's radio sat on a shelf with a faded strip of masking tape across the dial so nobody could move it from the station he liked. Grant picked a curl of plastic from the workbench. "I called 3 care facilities." Mara stared at him. "Last August," he said. "I got prices, waiting lists, all of it." "You never told me." "I told Owen." The hurt arrived so quickly it almost covered the anger. "Of course you did. You were sleeping 2 hours a night and telling everybody you were fine. Anytime I mentioned help, you acted like I was trying to dump Grandpa in a ditch. You said he'd be safer with professionals. He would have been. He would have died somewhere he didn't know. He died anyway." The words remained between them, brutal and ordinary. Grant rubbed his forehead. "That came out wrong?" "No. It came out like you. Mara, you gave up your job, your apartment. You stopped answering friends. He let you do it. He needed me. And now he leaves you the one piece of this place that needs everything." She looked toward the pocket where Grant had put Walter's knife. "You got the house. I got half a house with a leaking bathroom, 30-year-old wiring, and a brother who thinks a savings account is a personality defect. Owen saves money. Owen saves ketchup packets." Mara almost laughed and resented Grant for getting near it. He softened when he saw her mouth move. "I'm not saying you didn't deserve better, better being what you got. I'm saying you don't have to turn his bad decision into a test of whether you loved him enough." Denise called again, closer this time. Grant picked up the drop cloths. "I'll give you the name of the roofer I use." "With what money?" "He might let you pay in installments. That's almost as good as a roof." He passed her, then stopped. "The cord can stay. Just keep it under the protector." The concession was so small it should not have mattered. It did, which angered her more. That night, the temperature fell to 34. Mara slept in her clothes, waking whenever the kettle and the small borrowed space heater overloaded Owen's power strip. She learned to turn one off before using the other. By morning, this felt like knowledge. Sunday became the day of small humiliations. The cabin toilet, a tiny yellowed fixture behind a folding partition, would not flush without a bucket of water. A roofer returned her call and quoted an amount larger than the balance Walter's estate might eventually provide. Mara found mold on the underside of the mattress and dragged it onto the porch, where weak sun revealed several stains she chose not to interpret. Owen arrived with a folding cot from his apartment and a bag containing canned chili, batteries, and a framed photograph he had taken from the farmhouse. It showed Walter and Ruth standing in front of the cabin. Walter was young enough to have dark hair. Ruth wore trousers, a checked shirt, and no apron. Her hands rested on a crate of apples. Above their heads, the address plate was mounted straight. "Where was this?" Mara asked. "Hall closet." Grant made a pile of pictures for everybody to go through. "You took it?" "He said I could." "Did he know it was for me?" Owen adjusted one of the cot legs. "He said the cabin might as well have decorations." Mara set the picture beside Ruth's crate. They spent the afternoon sorting tools. In a narrow shed behind the cabin, they found picking poles, pruning saws, a three-legged orchard ladder, and an old wheeled sprayer with cracked hoses and a tank that smelled bitter even after decades. Owen lifted the sprayer handle. One wheel turned, the other dragged. "This thing needs an exorcist," he said. "Can you fix it?" "Not without knowing what it's supposed to do." "It sprays." "Your mechanical understanding humbles me." He photographed the manufacturer's plate. "I know somebody who works on old farm equipment. Eli Mercer." "Mercer as in Mercer Repair?" "His dad ran it. Eli does now. I went to school with a Mercer. That was probably him." "Quiet guy? Broke his arm falling off the water tower?" "That was Grant." "Grant fell off the water tower?" "Jumped. There was a mattress." "There was not." "There was after he hit the ground." Mara looked toward the farmhouse. "I have missed important history. You were 12. Grant was how old?" "Old enough to know a twin mattress is not a landing system." Owen left before dark, after making her promise to call if the space heater behaved strangely. She did not ask whether appliances had expressions he recognized. At 4:15 Monday morning, her alarm sounded in a room cold enough that she could see her breath. Mara washed using a bowl and a washcloth, pinned her hair, and drove to Bellwether with the heater vents blowing air that never quite warmed. Phyllis unlocked the diner at 4:58. "You're late," she said. Mara checked the clock over the pie case. "It's 4:58. Then you had time to be early." Phyllis handed her an apron and a pad. By 5:10, Mara had learned that the coffee machine hissed before spitting hot water. The freezer door required a hip check. And a man named Curtis wanted exactly 3 ice cubes in his orange juice because 4 made it watery. The first rush arrived in muddy boots and fluorescent work jackets. Mara forgot toast, confused 2 orders, and called a customer sir until the woman removed her cap and said, "I know my haircut's cheap, honey, but give me a chance." At 6:20, Phyllis cornered her near the dish station. "Table 4 needs coffee. 6 needs a check. Curtis has 4 ice cubes and looks prepared to sue. Why don't you buy smaller ice? Why don't you move faster?" Mara moved faster. She burned 2 fingers on a plate, dropped a spoon into a man's lap, and discovered that grief did not excuse mistakes, but did make people's complaints seem refreshingly specific. Nobody at the diner needed her to interpret a silence. They needed eggs, napkins, hot sauce, and the truth about whether the pie was fresh. At 7, a tall man in a dark work shirt sat at the far end of the counter. His brown hair was too long at the collar, and a pale scar crossed one eyebrow. He ordered black coffee and oatmeal. Mara brought both. He looked into the bowl. "I asked for eggs." She closed her eyes. "Of course you did. I can eat oatmeal." "No, you can't. Nobody can. They just survive it until lunch." The corner of his mouth moved. Mara reached for the bowl, but Phyllis called from the register. "Eli, your mother know you're encouraging incompetence?" The man looked at Mara more carefully. Mara Bell? She recognized him then, not from school exactly, but from the edges of it. Eli Mercer had been several years ahead, broad-shouldered and quiet. The boy people asked to move heavy things before remembering he had a name. "Did you fall off the water tower?" "No." "Good. I'm narrowing it down." His smile appeared slowly. "Heard about Walter." "I'm sorry." "Thank you." "Your grandmother used to feed my mother breakfast in that cabin during harvest. Eggs fried in bacon grease. Oatmeal might be safer, probably why she never served it." Phyllis slid an order ticket beneath Mara's hand. "Conversation is for people who can carry it, and 3 plates," Mara corrected Eli's breakfast. When she returned, he had left a business card beside his coffee cup. Mercer Equipment Repair. On the back, he had written, "Owen sent a photo. Don't start that sprayer until someone checks the tank. Mara read it twice. I wasn't going to start it. Eli glanced toward the kitchen. It doesn't have an engine. I knew that. It's a hand pump. I knew that too. You were going to look for a cord. She put his eggs down harder than necessary. Eat. At 10:30, Phyllis counted Mara's tips on the counter. $38.60. Do I come back tomorrow? Mara asked. Phyllis rearranged the coins into neat stacks. Curtis says you tried to drown him. He found the fourth ice cube. He always does. So, 4:30 tomorrow. You need more time before customers. Mara drove home with aching feet and a pair of used black shoes. Phyllis had sold her for $5 from a box in the office. The separate mailbox at the end of Orchard Lane hung open, its door twisted. She had not noticed it before. Inside lay a single envelope forwarded from the farmhouse. Her own name appeared above 118 Bell Orchard Lane. Mara carried it to the cabin, put it beside Ruth's order slips, and stared until the two addresses stopped looking like past and present. Then she changed into Walter's boots, took the pruning saw from the shed, and went looking for the North Row stamen. It took nearly an hour. The row numbers had vanished with old stakes, and several trees had fallen into the grass. At last she found a thick scarred trunk near the cedar line. One main limb was hollow at the end, but reddish buds crowded the younger branches. Still good. Mara placed the saw teeth against a dead limb and pulled. The branch resisted, hard enough to shake the whole tree. On the fourth stroke it gave way, dropping at her feet with a woody crack. The living branches lifted slightly without its weight. Mara stood beneath them, breathing hard, while pale sawdust settled over her sleeves like flour. Mara cut 3 more dead limbs before the light began to thin. The work warmed her faster than the space heater. Each branch gave a dry snap when it came free, and the pieces piled neatly beneath the stamen as if she knew what she was doing. The next tree was smaller, its center crowded with branches that crossed and rubbed. Walter had once told her a bird should be able to fly through a properly pruned apple tree. Mara stood back, imagined an unusually cautious bird, and began opening space. One branch pointed inward, another grew nearly straight up, a third shaded everything beneath it. The pruning saw stuck twice, then jumped loose and nicked the leather of Walter's boot. She switched to long-handled loppers she found in the shed, though one grip slid off every time she raised them. By the time she stopped, the tree looked startled. The pile beneath it was larger than the canopy above. Mara circled the trunk. You needed that. The tree offered no opinion. At the cabin, she lined the wet boots beside the stove, heated canned chili in a dented saucepan, and used part of her first day's tips to buy an electrical inspection online. The appointment cost $50 and was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. The confirmation went to 118 Bell Orchard Lane. She read the address twice before closing the screen. At 4:30 the next morning, Phyllis handed her an apron and said, "You look worse. I'm growing into the position. You're pouring coffee, not fighting overseas." By the end of the week, Mara knew Curtis wanted 3 ice cubes but would accept 2 if warned of a national shortage. She knew the woman in the cap was named Jo and drove a feed truck. She knew Table 7 wobbled, the blueberry syrup stained everything it respected, and Phyllis claimed not to hear compliments because they encouraged laziness. The money came home smelling faintly of fryer grease. Mara divided it into envelopes. Gas, food, cabin. The cabin envelope stayed the thinnest because gas and food did not care about sentiment. She left the diner after each shift with her feet throbbing and returned to the orchard as the day warmed. She cleared brambles from the first 2 rows, dragged fallen limbs toward the burn pile, and ruined a pruning blade on a nail swallowed by an old trunk. Walter had driven the nail there to hang a metal variety tag. Only a rusted corner remained. On Wednesday, Owen came down after work and found her sitting on the porch sharpening the damaged blade with no apparent effect. "You're holding the file backward," he said. "Then it should be getting duller, very efficiently." He turned it in her hand. "Eli called me," she said. "He has your number?" He called the diner. Owen winced. "That sounds like Eli. He said he could come look at the sprayer tomorrow." "Good. I didn't ask you to arrange it. You asked if I could fix it. My answer was to call someone who can. Does Grant know? About the sprayer? About anything?" Owen lowered himself onto the porch step. He had brought 2 sandwiches wrapped in foil. One was labeled turkey. The other was labeled also turkey. "The upstairs bathroom is down to the joists," he said. "They found more rot. Mara worked the file along the blade. Grant must be thrilled. He's sleeping here while Denise stays in town. Why? Because their dog keeps eating drywall dust. Mara looked up. Denise doesn't have a dog. She says Grant gets anxious when he's displaced. She laughed so suddenly the file slipped. Owen handed her the sandwich marked, "Also turkey." He asked about the orchard. He can see it. He asked what you're doing. Did you tell him I'm building an instant apple empire out of dead wood and extension cords? I told him you got a job. The laughter went out of her. You had no right. He's our brother. He didn't ask me. He asked me. Exactly. Owen's shoulders dropped. I thought he'd be relieved. Was he? He said you'd run yourself into the ground. That sounds relieved. He also said Bellwether makes terrible coffee. They do. Owen unwrapped his sandwich. I'm not good at this. At sandwiches? At having both of you mad at each other. Then stop standing in the middle. I'm not in the middle. I'm sitting on your porch. Fine. Stop carrying messages onto my porch. He nodded. Okay. They ate without talking. The turkey was dry, but the mustard helped. Before he left, Owen examined the overpruned tree. He had no more knowledge than Mara, but even he stood unusually still. What? She asked. Nothing. Say it. It looks aerodynamic. The electrician arrived Thursday in a van that ignored the farmhouse drive, turned onto Orchard Lane, and came directly to the cabin. Mara had been watching from the porch so she could wave him down. She lowered her hand before he saw. The address had worked. The electrician introduced himself as Dale, wiped his boots on a porch mat that did not exist, and spent 20 minutes opening boxes and making thoughtful noises. He found no immediate disaster. The wiring inside the cabin was old but mostly intact. The meter base, service cable, and grounding system would need replacement before the electric company reconnected anything. He wrote the estimate on a carbon form, $870. Mara read it once, then again, in case the numbers intended to rearrange themselves. That includes the permit? She asked. And the weatherhead. What if I don't want weather? Dale had heard better jokes from people with worse houses. His face did not move. I can split it into 2 payments. Can you split it into 10? I can't order material without half. She folded the estimate and paid him his $50. After his van left, she took the cabin envelope from beneath Ruth's ledger. It contained $42. At 3, a dark blue pickup rolled down Orchard Lane, pulling a narrow equipment trailer. The driver did not stop at the farmhouse or call for directions. He parked beside the cabin and got out in the same dark work shirt he wore at the diner, now marked with grease at one shoulder. Eli looked up at the address plate. Crooked, he said. So is the owner. Owen said that. Owen's dead to me. He bought a fuel filter from me this morning. Then he died with unfinished business. Eli went around the cabin without asking where the sprayer was. He found it under the shed roof, crouched beside the tank, and removed the cap carefully. Don't put your face over that, he said when Mara leaned closer. I wasn't. You were moving your face toward it. I like to understand the difference between advice and a command. A command has fewer words. He shone a light inside the tank. Residue. Might be copper, might be an old oil spray. Hoses are finished. Pump leather's dry. Pressure gauge is decorative. Can you fix it? Probably. How much? He named a figure that made the electrician's estimate seem almost friendly. Mara folded her arms. Then no. That's if I restore it. What's the cheaper version? I make it hold pressure without poisoning anything. New hose, seals, relief valve. Clean the tank properly. How much? Parts. Apples in the fall. You don't know if I'll have apples. Then pears. You don't know if I'll have pears. Your grandmother's seckel tree still alive? I don't know what that is. Small pear. North side, near the old fence. You remember one tree from when you were, 10? My mother remembers. She still complains Ruth paid her in fruit and worked her like a rented mule. Mara looked toward the rows. Is your mother still around? Lives 6 miles from here. Cuts her own firewood and lies to her doctor. That sounds familiar. She'd know which trees are which. The offer hung there. Mara did not accept it. Asking an older woman to walk through the orchard felt too close to asking for permission to belong there. Eli rolled the sprayer forward. The locked wheel carved a line in the dirt. Why apples? Mara asked. For payment? You could buy apples, not those. You don't know what they taste like now. Neither do you. He said it without challenge, just fact. Mara crouched beside the wheel. What if the whole orchard is finished? Then you won't need a sprayer. His answer irritated her because it contained no encouragement. You could say something hopeful. I could. But you're not going to. I haven't looked at the trees. She stood. Fine. Look. They walked the first rows. Eli did not touch every trunk or perform wisdom for her. He stopped occasionally to scrape bark with his thumbnail or look up into the branch structure. He pointed out fire blight scars on an old pear and a split crotch that needed bracing. Several trees were beyond saving. Several were not. At the stayman, he examined Mara's cuts. These are clean, he said. She felt absurdly pleased. Then they reached the smaller tree. Eli stopped. Mara waited. He walked around it once, hands in his pockets. Well, who did this? Wind. Wind used loppers? Owen. He doesn't have the attention span. She crossed her arms. I did. Eli looked at the pile, then at what remained. What were you trying to do? Open the middle. Grandpa said a bird should be able to fly through. A bird can fly through the stump now. Her face burned. Is it dead? No. Then what? You took off most of its fruiting wood. It'll respond by sending up shoots. A lot of them. So I ruined it. For this season, maybe. Not forever. You could have started with that. I asked what you were trying to do. To help it. That matters to you, not to the tree. Mara turned away before he could see how deeply the sentence went. Behind her, Eli shifted his weight. Walter over-pruned all the time. She looked back. He'd get mad at a branch and keep cutting, Eli said. My mother used to take his saw away. Did that work? No. He owned 3 saws. Mara laughed once, unwillingly. Eli nodded toward the remaining branches. Leave this one alone now. We'll see what it does. If you want the sprayer fixed, that's extortion. That's apples. He loaded the machine onto his trailer, using a hand winch. Before leaving, he gave Mara a pair of clear safety glasses from behind his truck seat. I have glasses, she said. You have funeral shoes too. Doesn't make them useful out here. She watched his pickup climb the lane, the old sprayer secured behind him. At the barn, Grant stepped outside as Eli passed. He looked from the trailer to Mara and raised one hand, asking a question from too far away. For the first time, she did not walk uphill to answer it. Grant came down 20 minutes later, carrying 2 pieces of scrap lumber. He found Mara kneeling beside the over-pruned tree, gathering branches into a pile. Who was that? He asked. Eli Mercer. I know who Eli is. Why did he take Grandpa's sprayer? He's repairing it. Grant looked toward the empty shed. Did you ask Owen before you sent it off? Why would I? Because some of the equipment in there might belong with the barn. The shed and everything in it came with the cabin. Did Miss Hensley say that? She said fixtures and contents. Fixtures and contents isn't necessarily equipment. Mara stood with an armful of branches. Are you going to fight me for a sprayer you didn't know existed an hour ago? I'm asking. No, you're checking whether I'm allowed. Grant looked at the branches in her arms, then at the butchered tree. Whatever he thought, he had enough sense not to say it. I brought these for the porch, he said. The lumber was weathered but solid, probably left from the bathroom demolition. One piece had a bent nail protruding from it. I don't need it. Your step rocks. I know. It'll take 5 minutes. I said I don't need it. Grant dropped the boards in the grass, then burned them. He walked uphill. Mara held the branches until their cut ends pressed crescents into her forearms. When Grant reached the first row, she called, Why did you come down? He turned. You could have texted about Eli. Would you have answered? No. That's why. He continued toward the farmhouse. The next morning, the rocking porch step caught Mara's heel and nearly sent her into the doorframe. She repaired it after work with one of Grant's boards. It took 43 minutes, 2 ruined screws, and language that caused the mouse in the wall to relocate. She burned the other board. Her life settled into hours measured by coffee refills, branches, and the slow thickening of envelopes. At the diner, Phyllis moved her from the quiet end of the counter to 4 booths near the window. Mara learned to carry 3 plates along one arm and to recognize people by what they complained about. Joe complained about diesel prices. Curtis complained about ice. Eli, when he came in, complained about nothing, which made him difficult to read. He sat at the counter twice a week, usually after the morning rush. Mara poured his coffee without asking and stopped bringing oatmeal. The tank cleaned up, he told her one morning. Pump barrel's good. How much are the parts? I haven't finished. How much so far? He stirred sugar into black coffee, contradicting the order he gave every time. 4 bags of apples. That's not a measurement. Depends on the bag. I'm serious. So am I. You can't run a business that way. You currently run an extension cord through wet grass, under a protector. Then you're ready to teach. Phyllis slapped a damp towel onto the counter between them. If flirting slows down my coffee service, it becomes taxable. We're not flirting, Mara said. Eli lifted his cup. I'm being audited. Mara walked away before her face could betray her. By the third week, she had enough for the electrician's first payment. She counted the cash 3 times on Ruth's table, then drove it to Dale's office rather than risk spending any of it on gas, groceries, or the waterproof work shoes Phyllis said she needed. Dale scheduled the job for the following Tuesday. The materials arrived at 118 Bell Orchard Lane on a flatbed truck. The driver passed the farmhouse, followed the lane, and unloaded the new meter base beside Mara's porch. Grant watched from the barn, but did not interfere. Later, she found a blue tarp placed over the boxes before an afternoon shower. She asked Owen whether he had done it. No, he said. She did not ask Grant. Spring moved first in the orchard's smallest details. Buds loosened. The reddish tips broke green, then showed tight clusters the color of old rose petals. Grass pushed up around the fallen limbs. Mara began waking to birds on the cabin roof and going to bed with soreness deep in her wrists. She took Walter's notes row by row, trying to match names to trees. The pencil records assumed knowledge she did not have. North Row began at a northern boundary no longer marked. Ruth used abbreviations without explanation. Several trees she called new were now thick enough that Mara could not circle their trunks with both arms. Eli's mother arrived on a windy Thursday wearing a canvas coat and carrying a walking stick she did not appear to need. Carla Mercer was 63, narrow as a fence rail, with Eli's patient eyes and none of his restraint. You're thinner than Ruth, she told Mara at the cabin door. Hello to you too. Ruth could lift the back end of a loaded cart. I can lift an empty one, then we know where to begin. Eli stood behind her holding a cardboard tray of coffee. I told her we were only looking. Carla took one of the cups. He says things. They started near the old fence. Carla recognized the Seckel pear by its small leaves and dense branching. She found 2 wine saps, a Grimes golden, and a tree she insisted was not an apple at all, despite Walter's note identifying it as such. Quince, she said. It looks like an apple tree, Mara said. Then call it one. The fruit won't cooperate. Carla moved slowly but without hesitation, tapping trunks with her stick, looking at graft unions, sometimes standing beneath a canopy with her head tilted. Ruth emerged through her stories in pieces. She swore when jar lids failed. She sang exactly 1 verse of every song because she knew no second verses. She kept a bottle of whiskey behind the pectin and claimed it was for fruitcake. She paid Carla by the hour during harvest, though Walter believed friends should help friends for free. He and Ruth fought about that, Mara asked. They fought about everything, quietly if company was here, loudly if they liked the company. Eli had fallen behind, tying orange tape around trees Carla identified. His handwriting on the tape was squared and careful. Why did the cabin have a separate address? Mara asked. Carla stopped near a pear whose bark flaked like old paint. For the mail. I understand what addresses do. No, you don't. Carla pointed her stick toward the farmhouse. Before Ruth got that number, every order and delivery went up there. Walter would stack her boxes by the back door. Sometimes he forgot to tell her. Once he left 2 cases of jars in the rain because he thought they were canning tomatoes and didn't want them. Why didn't she just tell people to use the cabin? She did. They'd ask for an address, so she got one. She made Walter come with her to put up the plate. He complained the whole time that one farm didn't need 2 numbers. Mara glanced at Eli. He was smiling at the ground. What did Ruth say? Carla's mouth creased. She said, Your house has an address. My work deserves one. The words went through Mara with enough force that she looked back at the cabin. Carla watched her. Don't turn Ruth into a saint because she's dead. She was mean about weak coffee and cheated at cards. But she knew when a thing should carry its own name. They found 27 living apple trees, 9 pears, the quince, and 6 trunks Carla could not identify before bloom. 11 more trees were dead, or near enough that taking them out would be mercy. The numbers were better than Mara feared and worse than she had imagined. Can it produce? She asked. Carla looked down the rows. Anything living produces something. Doesn't mean you can pay a bill with it. Eli gave his mother a warning look. She asked. I did, Mara said. Carla nudged a fallen apple with her boot. It collapsed into the grass. Your problem isn't only fruit. Ground needs mowing. Deer will eat the low growth. You have fungus in the north corner. Half these trees haven't been pruned in years. And based on that poor creature over there, neither have you. Mara looked at the overpruned tree. Everyone has an opinion about that tree. It's the easiest thing here to understand. Eli choked on his coffee. Carla stayed for 2 hours. Before leaving, she wrote variety names onto Mara's rough map and circled 3 trees that needed attention before bloom. At the cabin, she paused beneath the crooked address plate. Ruth would fix that, she said. I like it crooked. No, you don't. You like that you put it up. She reached over, took the screwdriver from Eli's back pocket without asking, and loosened the right screw. The plate settled level. Mara opened her mouth. Carla handed the screwdriver back. There. After their truck left, Mara stood on the porch looking at the straight plate. She wanted to be annoyed. Instead, she laughed. Tuesday morning, Dale shut off the extension cord. For most of the day, the cabin filled with drilling, hammering, and the smell of hot metal. Mara came home from the diner between rushes because she had traded the last 2 hours of her shift. She watched a new service cable rise from the meter base to the weatherhead and felt each foot of it as an expense. The electric company arrived near 4. The new meter clicked into place. Dale walked inside and flipped breakers. Try it. Mara stood beside the ceramic switch on the wall. It had clicked uselessly beneath her fingers every night for more than a month. She pushed it up. The ceiling fixture flashed, went dark, then came on with a dim yellow glow. Dust and dead insects showed inside the glass shade. Every flaw in the cabin became visible at once. Watermarks, cracked linoleum, warped cupboards, Ruth's penciled wall. Mara smiled so hard it hurt. That evening she returned Owen's extension cords coiled neatly in the cardboard box. He plugged in her space heater and kettle at the same time, then waited. Neither shut off. Luxury, he said. Don't touch anything. You'll use it all. He opened her refrigerator, a second-hand cube she had bought for $20 from Phyllis. It contained mustard, half a sandwich, and 4 bottles of water. You're thriving. I have condiments and infrastructure. Grant came down after sunset. He stood outside until Mara opened the door. You got power, he said. She stepped aside. He entered carefully, as if unsure of the rules. His gaze moved over Ruth's crate, the photograph, the variety map, and the ledger drying beneath a clean dish towel. The electric light gave his face a tired gray cast. You remember Grandma selling out here? Mara asked. A little. Why didn't you tell me? I figured you knew. Everybody figured I knew. Grant touched the edge of the crate. She let me stamp the bags once. I put the address upside down on about 50 of them. What happened? She used them anyway. Mara leaned against the counter. Carla says Grandma wanted the work to have its own name. That sounds like Carla. It sounds like Grandma. Grant looked at her, then away. Maybe. Outside, wind moved through the new leaves with a sound like steady rain. Grant went to the door. Weather service says cold front Friday night. How cold? Maybe 28. Mara followed him onto the porch. All through the orchard, blossom clusters were opening. Hundreds of pale, vulnerable mouths turned toward the dark. Can they survive 28? Mara asked. Grant pulled his jacket closed. Depends how long it stays there. How do you know? I remember Grandpa losing a crop. So do something. He stared at her. Like what? The demand had come from a place older than the orchard. Grant heard it. She saw that in the way his shoulders stiffened. I'm telling you because you might not have checked, he said. I'm not the weather. He walked back toward the farmhouse. Mara went inside and searched frost damage until the words blurred. The articles disagreed in the manner of people confident they would never meet. Water the ground. Do not water the blossoms unless irrigation can continue. Use covers, but not plastic. Run fans. Burn orchard heaters. Except that open blossoms could be damaged at temperatures below 29 degrees, depending on duration, humidity, wind, variety, slope, and the private mood of God. She called Carla. If it hits 28 for 1 hour, you'll lose some, Carla said. If it sits there until sunrise, you'll lose plenty. What did Ruth do? Swore. After that. Watered the ground if the pump worked. Covered the little trees, sometimes built smoky fires, which made Walter feel useful and did nothing but upset the neighbors. So, There's nothing I can do. I didn't say that. I said, there's nothing you can do that makes you boss of spring. Mara looked at the map on the table. Which trees matter most? All of them, if you're asking a tree. Carla, the seckel blooms early. Cover what you can. Ground under the north rose is dry. Wet soil holds more heat than dry. But you don't have water, do you? The farmhouse does. Carla was quiet. I'll figure it out, Mara said. She called Owen next. I have 2 garden hoses, he said. One might be 50 feet. I need about 500. I said what I have, not what would solve it. Can you get more? Yes. How? Store. Those cost money. That is traditionally how stores work. I can pay you back. Don't make this irritating, Mara. He arrived after dark with 4 coils of hose, 2 cheap tarps, and a stack of old sheets tied with clothesline. The sheets had blue flowers on them. Where did these come from? She asked. Linen closet, Grant's linen closet, jointly inherited linen closet. He's going to kill you. He said, take the ugly ones. Grant followed 10 minutes later, carrying a wrench and 2 more hoses over one shoulder. Mara watched him cross the orchard. What? He said when he reached them. Nothing. The spigot at the barn hasn't been used in years. It'll leak at the stem unless we tighten the packing nut. She stepped aside. They connected the hoses from the barn down the lane, coupling one length to another. Grant opened the spigot slowly. Brown water coughed from the far end, then ran clear. Mara soaked the grass beneath the early blooming trees, while Owen and Grant argued over whether water could travel uphill through a hose. It's coming downhill, Grant said. The orchard slopes in 2 directions. Everything slopes in 2 directions if you're confused enough. Mara sprayed both of them. Grant flinched from the cold water. Owen stood dripping, offended. You're wasting heat, Grant said. There was no heat in that water. Ground heat. Then get off my warm ground. They worked under portable lights plugged into the cabin. The white blossoms glowed against the dark branches. Mara covered the smaller pear trees and tied the sheets beneath their canopies. On the larger trees, the fabric reached only a few lower limbs. Wind caught the corners, turning the orchard into a line of pale, struggling ghosts. Eli arrived at 9 with the repaired sprayer strapped to his trailer. I called him, Owen said, before Mara could ask. I didn't. You were about to pour warm water into a hand sprayer and miss 30 trees. Mara looked at Eli. I considered it. It'll freeze on the flowers unless you keep water moving until the air warms, he said. That machine holds 12 gallons. You'd be pumping until next Thursday. I'm not doing nothing. Eli took off his coat and laid it in his truck. Then tell me where the dry ground is. He worked without treating her panic as foolish. That kindness was harder to bear than reassurance. He moved hoses, tied covers, and showed Mara how to use orchard staples to hold fabric edges against the soil. When Grant asked about the sprayer, Eli explained each repair and the cost in parts. I'll pay you, Grant said. No, Mara said. The 2 men looked at her. It's mine. I didn't say it wasn't, Grant replied. I'm paying in apples. Grant glanced at the flowering trees. That might be a problem. Eli hooked the empty trailer to his truck and said, Then I'll wait. Near midnight, the temperature fell to 31. Owen drove into town and returned with coffee, hand warmers, and 4 knit caps from a gas station display. One said, Hot Mama, in silver thread. Grant drew it from the bag. This is mine, he said. You absolutely earned it, Owen replied. Grant wore it. They sat in the cabin while the hoses ran. 4 adults filled the one room beyond comfort. Damp gloves steamed near the electric heater. Eli turned Ruth's old order slips over one at a time, careful not to crack them. Owen drank cocoa from the enamel cup. Grant took the chair nearest the door, as if remaining ready to leave made him less present. Mara stood at the window watching the thermometer she had hung from the porch post. 30, she said. No wind? Eli replied. That's bad. For frost, yes. Grant passed her a coffee. You remember the year Grandpa made those oil can heaters? No. You were away. Mara had spent 1 year at community college, which in family memory was often described as though she had crossed an ocean. He put them between the rows, Grant continued. Black smoke everywhere. Fire department came because somebody on the county road thought the barn was burning. Did the blossoms survive? She asked. Some. Because of the heaters? Grandpa said yes. Grandma said the cold lifted before dawn, and he'd wasted 20 gallons of fuel, Owen smiled into his cup. Sounds healthy? They fought for a week, Grant said. Then she made him paint all the cans because she said if he was going to clutter her orchard, the clutter could at least match. Red, Eli said. Grant looked at him. You remember? My mother still has two. Uses them as planters. Mara pictured Ruth directing Walter through the same panic, refusing to let him turn fear into authority. The orchard had looked vulnerable before she arrived. It had survived people's attempts to save it. At 2, the thermometer showed 28. Mara walked outside every 15 minutes, shining a flashlight on white fabric silvered with frost. The wet grass hardened under her boots. Water formed a thin skin of ice in the ruts. You should sleep for an hour, Eli said from the porch. So should you. I don't own any of this. That's why you should be home. He leaned against the post. My mother says Ruth did this alone one spring after Walter decided frost was her problem. Why? He was mad she'd paid someone to replace the cabin sink without asking him. Mara glanced through the window. Grant had fallen asleep in the chair wearing the hot mama cap. Owen lay on the floor with Walter's coat over his legs. Men in this family get attached to being consulted, she said. Men everywhere. We hold conferences. You don't. I'm consulting you now. Sleeper coffee? Coffee. He went inside. The cold held until almost 5. Mara watched the eastern sky turn from black to a thin, colorless gray. Frost feathered the cabin windows. The covered trees stood motionless beneath stiff fabric. Grant woke with the gas station hat crooked over one ear. He checked his phone. 27 at the airport, he said. We're lower than the airport, Owen murmured from the floor. Higher, Grant said. Geographically or morally, both. When sunlight finally touched the upper branches, it brought no warmth. They waited until the fabric began to soften before removing it. Eli warned them that frozen blossoms could be damaged by handling, so they carried the covers away without letting them drag. At first, everything looked unharmed. The orchard was white and pink in the clean morning light. Water droplets shone along the petals. Mara let herself breathe. Then Carla arrived. She stepped from her car wearing the same canvas coat and walked directly to the seckel pear. With a small knife, she cut through an open blossom at its base and held the center toward Mara. Brown. Dead? Mara asked. That one. Carla cut another. Brown again. Mara moved to the nearest apple. The petals fell when she touched them. Inside, the tiny developing center had turned dark. They checked tree after tree. The uncovered upper blossoms were worst. Some looked healthy outside, but cut brown. The covered pears had fared better, though not completely. On the lower slope, pockets of cold had settled between rows and killed nearly everything open. By 7, Mara's fingers were sticky with crushed flowers. Half, Carla said. Maybe a little more. Mara looked over the orchard. The damage was invisible from a distance. Every tree appeared full of promise. I watered, she said. We covered them. Yes. We were out here all night. Yes. And it's still yes. Carla's agreement left Mara nowhere to place the unfairness. Grant stood several yards away coiling hose. Owen folded sheets badly, each one becoming a damp lump. Eli checked the later blooming trees along the cedar line. Mara took off her gloves. I have to go to work. You haven't slept, Owen said. I missed yesterday's last 2 hours. To meet the electrician. Phyllis doesn't care. I suspect Phyllis cares and enjoys hiding it. Mara was already walking toward the cabin. Her hands shook while she changed. She dropped one of the used black shoes and kicked it under the cot. For several seconds she could not remember where she had put her apron. Eli found it hanging beside the door. You don't have to come back out, she said. I know. Tell Carla I'm sorry. For what? For wasting her time. He handed her the apron. Don't do that. What? Turn losing blossoms into an insult to everyone who helped. Her eyes stung. You said the orchard might be finished. I said it might be. And now? Now half the blossoms are dead. That sounds finished. Eli nodded toward the window. Half aren't. Mara tied the apron around her waist with more force than necessary. At the diner, she poured Curtis's orange juice over 4 ice cubes. He looked into the glass. Mara, I dare you. Curtis removed 1 cube with his spoon and ate breakfast without another word. Phyllis watched Mara carry plates for 20 minutes, then caught her wrist as she passed the register. You're pale. I'm tired. You're swaying. The floor's uneven. The floor hasn't moved since 1986. Mara tried to pull away, but Phyllis held on. What happened? Frost. Understanding reached her before explanation did. Phyllis released Mara's wrist and took the coffee pot from her hand. Sit in the office. I need the hours. You need 10 minutes. I need the tips. Phyllis's face hardened. Don't make me kind in front of people. Mara sat on a flour sack in the office with her face in her hands. Through the half-open door, she heard Phyllis tell Table 6 their server was busy preventing a nervous breakdown in the syrup inventory. 10 minutes later, Mara returned to the floor. She finished the shift. When she reached the cabin, everyone was gone. The hoses lay coiled beside the porch. Folded sheets sat in a dry stack. The repaired sprayer waited under the shed roof with a new hose, a clear gauge, and an envelope taped to its handle. Inside was Eli's parts receipt. At the bottom, he had written, "Payable after harvest. Half a crop is still a crop." Mara folded the receipt and put it in the cabin envelope, which had become an accounting category rather than a source of money. The frost did not reveal its full answer for another week. Damaged blossoms fell first, collecting beneath the trees like wet paper. The survivors shed their petals more slowly. Green centers swelled where flowers had been. So small Mara had to hold a branch still to see them. Carla made her wait before counting. Trees drop fruit on their own, she said. June drop. It's April. Trees don't care what your phone says. Mara waited badly. She walked the rows before diner shifts with a flashlight, checking branches she had checked the evening before. She entered numbers on Ruth's wall in pencil, but erased them so often the plaster turned gray. The overpruned tree produced no blossoms after the frost. Instead, bright shoots erupted from every major limb, straight and vigorous. It's growing, Mara said when Eli came to test the sprayer. It's panicking. Growth can be panic. Most of it, probably. He pumped the handle until the gauge rose, then opened the nozzle. A clean fan of water spread across the grass. Mara smiled. You want to try? She took the handle. The pump resisted more than she expected. After 10 strokes, her shoulder burned. That's terrible, she said. 4 bags of apples. 3. The pump is terrible. It's older than your mother. So is Phyllis, and she works faster than both of us. Eli looked toward the cabin. You have lunch? I have mustard. I saw that refrigerator. You opened it without a warrant. I'm going into town. I can bring something. I have to be at the diner in an hour. That wasn't my question. Mara rested both hands on the sprayer handle. Eli had become skilled at standing still until she heard what she was refusing. It was irritating in a way she had begun anticipating. I can eat in the truck, she said. They ate chicken sandwiches on the tailgate. Eli did not ask about the frost or Walter or whether she had forgiven her brothers. He told her about a man who brought a mower into the shop because it made an alarming grinding noise. The noise was a chain wrapped around the blade with a ceramic garden goose attached. Was the goose all right? Mara asked. Head injury. Did you save it? I'm a mechanic, not a surgeon. She laughed with her mouth full. When she drove to work, she saw Eli in the mirror standing beside the sprayer, watching the trees rather than her car. The orchard demanded money in amounts too small to justify panic and too frequent to ignore. Fuel for the borrowed mower, new pruning blades, orchard staples, deer repellent that smelled like rotten eggs, and made the cabin unlivable when Mara spilled it on her jeans. Dale's second payment. The diner envelopes grew and emptied. She learned to repair what she could. Grant's leftover lumber became a shelf. Owen helped her replace the rotten porch rail, though she made him remove his first attempt, because it sloped enough to roll a coffee cup from one end to the other. It drains, he argued. It's a handrail, not a roof. Mara sealed the cabin windows and scrubbed Ruth's sink until the porcelain showed white beneath the rust. The water line remained unusable, so she filled gallon jugs from the barn spigot. Grant never told her to stop. He did not come down often. When he did, he stood at the edge of the lane or found a reason to address Owen instead. The farmhouse renovation spread into the yard. A blue dumpster near the main drive, stacks of tile beneath plastic, contractors' pickups tucked wherever they fit. Delivery drivers began using Orchard Lane. The first was looking for the farmhouse and turned around near the cabin. The second left 2 bathroom vanities against Mara's porch because the separate number showed on his screen. These aren't mine, she told Grant over the phone. I know. Then why are they at my house? He said nobody answered up here. He found someone. Just the wrong someone. Grant and Owen moved the vanities that evening. Grant apologized, though he did so while explaining the problem with the main drive, which made the apology feel like a receipt. After that, orange cones appeared near the barn, directing trucks toward the orchard lane whenever the dumpster company came. Mara moved them. Someone moved them back. "The lane's wider," Grant said when she confronted him. "It runs through my trees. They're driving on gravel." "There isn't enough gravel. It's temporary. So was me sleeping on the sofa." He looked away. "What do you want me to do? Put trucks through the front yard?" "Yes. Denise just had it graded." My heart breaks for the dirt. He took the cones away that day. 2 mornings later, they returned. By then, fruit had begun to set. The pears looked like green beads. On the stayman, tiny apples clustered at the ends of spurs. Proof so delicate Mara was afraid to photograph it. She thinned them as Carlo instructed, removing all but one fruit from crowded clusters. Pulling healthy apples felt obscene. "You can have 10 small ones or 1 good one," Carla said. "I'd take 10. That's why I'm here." At the far edge of the 3rd row stood a younger tree that Walter had planted with Mara 5 years earlier, after her mother's funeral. Mara had been 20. She had left the farmhouse full of people speaking softly and found Walter beside the shed with a shovel. He handed it to her, without mentioning why her hands shook. Together they dug a hole in March soil and planted an Arkansas black sapling he had ordered the previous winter. "Your mother hated these," Walter told her. Mara had looked at him, shocked. Said they were hard as baseballs. "Then why are we planting one?" "Because she was wrong. You keep them till Christmas." It was the first joke Mara laughed at after the funeral. The young tree had struggled through 2 dry summers, suffered deer damage, and grown crooked despite its staking. This spring it held 11 apples. Mara knew because she counted them every morning. She was carrying water jugs down from the barn when she heard the truck. A boxy white delivery vehicle had turned onto Orchard Lane. Tile Express was printed in blue across its side. The driver stopped near the cabin, where the lane narrowed, and began backing to correct his angle. Mara set down both jugs. "Wait." The driver's window was open, but his radio was loud. He looked in his mirror, saw her, and raised one hand. The rear tire rolled off the gravel. Mara ran. A branch caught beneath the truck's step and bent. For half a second, the young tree bowed almost to the ground, its leaves shaking. Then the trunk split just above the graft and snapped backward with a sound too small for what it did. "Stop!" The truck stopped. The driver climbed down. He was a heavy-set man with sunglasses resting on top of his head. "I didn't hit the cabin. You hit the tree." He looked behind the tire. "Ah, hell." Mara dropped to her knees beside the trunk. One strip of bark still connected the upper tree to the base. The 11 apples hung from branches now resting in the grass. "I can call my supervisor," the driver said. She tried to lift the trunk. "Get this off it." "What?" "Move the truck." He pulled forward. Bark tore with a soft ripping sound. Grant came running from uphill, Owen behind him. The driver began explaining before Grant reached them. "Main driveway was blocked. The cones pointed me down here." "There weren't supposed to be cones," Grant said. "There were cones," Mara replied. Owen crouched beside her. "Don't move it more. I'm holding it." "I know. Get a stake." Grant looked at the trunk. "Mara, get a stake." Eli arrived 25 minutes later because Owen called him. Mara remained on the ground, holding the tree upright while her brothers stood nearby. The tile driver had left after giving Grant a card and apologizing twice. Mara had not answered him. Eli examined the brake without touching it first. Then he lifted the bark flap gently. "Can you brace it?" Mara asked. He looked at her. "People brace trees, not this." "You haven't tried. The graft's split. Wrap it." "There isn't enough cambium attached." "I don't care what it's called, I know." She gripped the trunk harder. Leaves trembled above her. Grant said, "We can replace it." Mara turned on him. His face changed immediately. He understood the mistake, though not fast enough to take it back. "This one," she said, "Grandpa planted with me. I didn't know. You don't know anything down here. That's not fair. You put the cones back. I didn't. The tile crew did. Because you told them to use the lane. The main drive was blocked. Your bathroom mattered more than my trees. It was an accident. It was an accident you kept arranging." Owen said her name quietly. Mara looked at him. "Don't." He closed his mouth. Eli crouched on the other side of the trunk. Mara, we have to lower it. No. The bark will tear farther. It's already dead, according to you. Yes. The word broke something her brother's explanations had not. Mara let Eli take the weight. Together they lowered the tree into the grass. 2 of the little apples came loose and rolled beneath the leaves. Grant stood with his arms at his sides. Tell me what it costs. She stared at him. The tree, he said. The damage. I'll pay for it. You can't buy 5 years. I'm trying to make it right. You're trying to make it finished. His mouth opened, then closed. Mara walked to the cabin, brought back the heavy chain Owen had used to secure the sprayer trailer, and stretched it across Orchard Lane between 2 old fence posts. It hung low until Eli helped her tighten it. Grant watched. You can't block access, he said. To what? The property? This is my address. It's one farm. No. You made that very clear the day you changed the locks. Mara, contractors still need to get through. They have a driveway. This is childish. Owen flinched. Mara snapped a padlock through the chain. Then you should have no trouble understanding it. Grant walked uphill without another word. Eli helped cut the broken tree into sections because leaving it whole felt worse. Mara kept one branch with 6 apples attached and laid it on the cabin table beneath the photograph of Ruth. Owen stayed until dusk. He washed the dirt from his hands at the outdoor spigot and sat on the porch step. You're going to have to work something out with Grant, he said. I did. There's a chain. He's furious. So am I. The tile has to be moved tomorrow. Front driveway. The dumpster blocks the turn. Move the dumpster. He rubbed his palms against his jeans. You know it isn't that simple. Mara looked at him. It's never simple when Grant wants something. I didn't say remove the chain forever, just whenever it becomes uncomfortable. That isn't what I mean. It's what you always mean. Owen stared toward the farmhouse lights. I'm trying to keep everybody from doing permanent damage. She looked through the cabin window at the severed branch on Ruth's table. You're late, she said. He left without saying goodbye. After dark, Mara made a second sign from a piece of Grant's scrap lumber. She painted the letters beneath the porch light and carried it to the chain while they were still wet. She hung it in the center, where every person coming downhill would have to stop and read it. The tile truck returned at 7 the next morning. It stopped at the chain. The driver leaned on his horn once, then twice. Mara came out carrying her coffee. The sign swung between them. I've got a delivery for the main house, he called. Main drive's uphill. Guy told me this way. Not anymore. The driver looked at the chain, then at the narrow space where he would have to reverse. Can you open it so I can turn around? You can turn at the barn. I can't get to the barn. Mara drank her coffee. He reversed. 20 minutes later, the dumpster company arrived. Grant had the blue container hauled away before it was full. The truck tore 2 deep ruts across the farmhouse lawn while repositioning, and Denise stood on the porch with both hands pressed to her cheeks. Mara watched from between the pear trees. She felt vindicated for almost a minute. Then she saw Grant kneel beside one of the ruts and push loose sod back into place with his bare hands. There was something defeated in the gesture. It did not make her unlock the chain, but it took the pleasure out of leaving it closed. At noon, he came down alone. Give me a key, he said. No. I'm not asking you to remove it. You asked yesterday. I'm asking for a key in case there's an emergency. What emergency requires tile? Fire? Ambulance? A tree down across the main drive. The cabin has its own address. Emergency services can come straight here. Through the locked chain, I can open it. What if you're not home? Then they're not coming for me. Grant exhaled through his nose. You've thought of every answer. I've had years of practice. That doesn't even make sense. It doesn't have to. It's my lane. His eyes moved to the sign. A bead of dried white paint hung from the final T in appointment. You going to lock us out of the orchard too? You don't come down here. That isn't an answer. No, I'm not. He nodded once sharply. Fine. Grant never cut the chain. Mara had expected him to. For several nights, any metallic sound outside woke her, and she reached for the flashlight. The chain remained where she had placed it. Contractors used the main drive. Delivery trucks found the farmhouse without passing the cabin. Drivers bringing parts, orchard staples, or a used push mower to Mara called the phone number she had painted beneath the address. She walked up with the key and let them through. The interruption became a ritual. Stop. Read. Ask. For the first time, people arriving on the farm had to know which place they meant. The 6 apples on the severed branch shriveled. Mara kept it on Ruth's table until fruit flies gathered, then carried it outside after midnight so no one could see her discard it. She buried the apples beneath the Arkansas black stump and felt foolish the entire time. Eli found her there. His truck had rolled down with the lights off after she opened the chain for him. He carried a replacement nozzle for the sprayer and a paper bag darkened with grease at the bottom. "I brought donuts," he said. "It's 10:30. They were fresh at 6. Those are historical donuts." He looked at the dirt beneath her fingernails. "What did you plant?" "Nothing." He waited. "The apples from the branch. Those seeds won't grow the same variety." "I know. You might get a tree." "I don't want a tree." "Okay." She stood and brushed dirt from her knees. "I know how grafting works, basically." I didn't say anything. "You thought it. I thought you might want a donut." They sat on the porch. The donuts were stiff around the edges, but the chocolate icing remained good. Fireflies moved between the trees. From uphill came the electric whine of a sander inside the farmhouse. "Grant asked for a key," Mara said. "What did you say?" "No." "What did he say?" "Fine." Eli nodded. "That's all? What else? You always make me do the whole conversation. I wasn't there. Do you think I should give him one?" "No." The quick answer surprised her. "Why?" "Because you don't want him to have one. That's not a reason." "It is, until you find a better one." Mara looked at his profile in the porch light. "You're strange. I brought old donuts to a woman burying apples at night." She smiled. His hand rested on the step between them. There was a healing cut across one knuckle, and grease embedded near the nails. Mara became aware of the small distance between their shoulders. Inside the wall, the mouse scratched. Eli glanced toward it. "You need a cat. I need a bathroom that flushes. A cat's cheaper. Not if it does plumbing." The moment shifted without breaking. He left the sprayer nozzle beside the door and drove home before she could decide whether she had wanted him to stay. The surviving fruit grew through heat, insects, and Mara's suspicion. Pears rounded beneath the leaves. Apples thickened from marbles to walnuts. Deer ate every low branch on one outer tree before the repellent convinced them to offend someone else. Mara learned the rhythm of the sprayer. Pump, walk, adjust, pump. Carla showed her how to watch the leaves instead of the calendar, and how to remove infected shoots without carrying disease from one tree to the next. Mara kept disinfectant in a jar tied to her belt and still forgot twice. At the diner, she began bringing damaged fruit that fell early. Phyllis cut one green apple with a paring knife, chewed a piece, and spat it into the trash. "Terrible." "It isn't ripe." "Then why'd you bring it?" "To see what it is. It's terrible." A man in booth 3 looked up from his newspaper. "What variety?" Mara brought him one of the better samples. His name was Luis Ortega, and he owned a restaurant in Ashboro that Phyllis described as the kind of place that stacks food instead of serving it. Luis turned the apple in his hand. "Could be Grimes. Bring me one when it ripens." "How will I know?" "You'll bite it. Carla says they go yellow. Then bite the yellow ones." Phyllis pointed her knife at him. "Professional insight. Put that on the bill." Luis began asking what else Mara had. She listed the varieties Carla had identified and admitted half might be wrong. "Call me before you pick," he said. "If the pears are good, I'll take a few boxes." "How many is a few?" "Depends if they're good." Nobody would give her a number she could count on. She wrote his name on Ruth's wall anyway. The orchard took shape around uncertainty. Mara bought 50 plain paper bags and stamped them with the cabin address using a rubber stamp she ordered for $12. The first impression came out upside down. She stared at it, then remembered Grant saying he had done the same thing for Ruth. She kept the bag. Owen did not come down for 12 days after their argument. He sent no message except a picture of a plumbing fixture Grant had chosen, captioned, "This sink costs more than my car." Mara did not answer. On the 13th evening, Owen was sitting beside the chain when she returned from the diner. He had parked at the barn and walked down. A pizza box rested on his knees. "You can come in," she said. "I know." She unlocked the chain, drove through, and locked it again behind her. Owen carried the pizza to the cabin. He had ordered mushrooms on half, though he hated them, and extra cheese on the entire thing, though Mara had never liked extra cheese. It was so precisely wrong that she knew he was nervous. They ate at Ruth's table. After his second slice, Owen said, Grandpa asked us to help you. Mara set down her cup. Not with the cabin. I mean, maybe that too. He asked us to help you keep the orchard going. When? Last October. Grant and I were fixing the barn door. Grandpa came out and said, "When she gets this, don't let her do it alone." The room seemed to grow quiet around the electric hum of the little refrigerator. "He told you I was getting it." "Not exactly. I thought he meant eventually." "Or that you'd run it while he was alive." "What did Grant say?" "He said the orchard hadn't made money in 30 years. "And Grandpa?" "He said he wasn't asking us to make money. He was asking us not to let you disappear into the work." Mara looked at the pizza. Grease had soaked through the box in a dark circle. "What did you say?" "Nothing." "Of course." Owen's eyes reddened. I told myself he was confused. Then the will came, and Grant said you'd sell once you saw what the cabin needed. He said cash would be kinder. I let that make sense because I wanted the truck and half the house, and I didn't want to start a fight before we even had them. You already had them, I know. No, you don't. You stood at the sink washing clean cups while he handed me an address plate, like I should thank him for not making me homeless. I know. You keep saying that. Because every explanation I have makes it worse. Mara pushed away from the table and went to the window. The chain was barely visible beyond the porch light. Does Grant expect me to fail? Owen took too long. Yes, he said. He calls it getting tired. He thinks one morning you'll wake up and understand what he's been trying to tell you, that I can't do it, that you shouldn't have to. He doesn't get to make those the same thing. I know. She turned. Stop saying that. He nodded. Owen took a folded sheet of paper from his pocket and put it on the table. It was a work schedule from his company. Saturdays were marked in blue. What is this? My free days through harvest. Tell me which ones you need. I don't want guilt labor. It's not guilt. What is it? He looked at Ruth's photograph. Late. Mara did not forgive him. She did not tear up the schedule either. The following Saturday, Owen arrived at 7 in full view of the farmhouse. Grant stood near the barn, talking to a contractor, when Owen walked past him, carrying gloves and a water jug. He did not lower his head. Together, Mara and Owen cleared the cabin porch, scrubbed the old hand scale, and unfolded Ruth's picking bags in the sun. Mara set the first properly stamped paper bag on the table. Across the front, beneath a simple drawing of an apple, the address read, 118 Bell Orchard Lane. For the first time, it looked less like where she had been sent, and more like where someone might come. The first pear came loose in Mara's hand before she meant to pick it. She had lifted it gently, testing the stem the way Carla showed her, and the fruit dropped into her palm with a soft weight that felt disproportionate to its size. The skin was green gold, freckled near the base, one side marked by a crescent where a branch had rubbed it. Carla took it, cut 4 slices with her pocket knife, and handed them around. Owen bit first. Juice ran down his thumb. "Oh," he said. Mara's stomach tightened. "Good, oh?" He took another bite instead of answering. Eli chewed slowly. 4 bags. You haven't fixed enough things for 4 bags. I fixed a machine nobody's manufactured parts for since 1978. Carla ate her slice to the seeds. Ruth would have waited 2 more days. Is it bad? Mara asked. It's excellent. In 2 days, it would be better. Mara picked another anyway. The pears ripened faster than she could understand them. One morning, they clung firmly to the branches. 2 days later, several lay bruised in the grass, and yellow jackets had found the sweetest split fruit. She called Luis. He arrived from Ashboro in a white kitchen coat, with the sleeves rolled up, and stood beneath the seckel tree eating 3 pears in silence. Well, Mara asked, these aren't seckel. Carla, who had come specifically to supervise his opinion, narrowed her eyes. Yes, they are. Luis cut one lengthwise. Too large. Tree's been neglected. Ruth called them seckel. Ruth also called quince apples when she wanted Walter to stop arguing. Mara looked between them. Can I sell them? Luis ate another slice. Yes. What do I call them? Pears. He bought 2 boxes and 12 pounds of Grimes golden apples that had ripened earlier than Mara expected. The total was less than she had imagined when he first mentioned restaurant orders, but he paid without bargaining and asked her to call when the stamens were ready. After his van disappeared up Orchard Lane, Mara counted the cash. That won't cover the mower fuel, she said. It wasn't meant to, Carla replied. What was it meant to cover? the fruit he took. Mara looked at the trees still carrying uneven clusters. There was too much for her refrigerator and too little to interest a wholesaler. Several varieties would not ripen for weeks. The pears demanded action now. She remembered the Saturday porch in Ruth's stories. Do people still come out for fruit? Carla shrugged. People come out for cinnamon candles and old chairs somebody painted blue. Fruit has a chance. Mara made a sign from a sheet of plywood Grant had left beside the barn. She painted Orchard Open Saturday in red, added 9, 2 beneath it, and put the cabin address at the bottom. Owen drove the sign to the county road because it would not fit in Mara's car. Grant watched them load it. You're opening to the public? He asked. Anybody with money? You need parking. I have grass. You also need insurance. I have insurance. For selling, Mara did not. Grant saw the answer. I'm not trying to stop you. You're very gifted at imitating it. I'm trying to keep somebody from falling off that porch and suing everybody whose last name is Bell. Owen tightened the rope holding the sign. I fixed the porch. Grant looked at the handrail. That's not comforting. Mara called her insurance agent. Adding farm stand coverage cost $31 a month. She almost canceled the opening. Instead, she paid the first month and wrote the expense on Ruth's wall beneath electric and sprayer parts. The wall was becoming less an archive than an argument. Phyllis placed a handwritten notice beside the diner register. Joe promised to tell people on her feed route. Curtis said roadside apples were how hepatitis started, then asked whether Mara would have Honeycrisp. No. Everybody likes Honeycrisp. Then everybody can go somewhere else. Customer service, Phyllis said. Her gift. On Friday, Mara worked from 4:30 until noon, picked fruit until dark, and stayed up stamping bags. The rubber address stamp had already begun losing ink at one corner. She pressed harder, making the numbers blur. At 1 in the morning, she found herself crying over a bag that read 118 Bell Orchard Lane perfectly. She threw it into the pile and went to bed. Owen arrived before 7, carrying 2 folding tables. Eli brought the repaired hand scale from his shop, polished but still inaccurate by 3 ounces. Carla brought an old red cash box that had belonged to Ruth. You kept this? Mara asked. Ruth loaned it to my mother for a yard sale in 1994. Nobody remembered to return it. That's stealing. That's storage with poor communication. They arranged pears in Ruth's crates and apples in shallow baskets so the bruised sides did not show. Mara wrote prices on cards, erased them, lowered them, then raised them after Carla accused her of apologizing with numbers. At 8:55, everyone stood on the porch looking at the empty lane. At least we're prepared, Owen said. For what? Mara asked. Birds? At 9, no one came. At 9:10, Mara rearranged the pears. At 9:15, Eli took one of her price cards away because she had changed it twice. At 9:23, a sedan stopped at the chain. Mara ran up the lane with the key. Behind the sedan waited Joe's feed truck and a pickup Mara did not recognize. By the time she unlocked the chain, another car had turned in from the county road. You might want to leave it open, Joe called. Mara did. The first hour came in bursts. People walked around the cabin carrying stamped bags. Some bought 3 apples, some bought 20 pounds. Nearly everyone wanted to know whether the farmhouse was open too. No, Mara said, until Owen added, farm stand this way, to the sign near the barn. Curtis arrived at 10 with a suspicious expression and bought 6 pounds of pears. What do you do with 6 pounds? Mara asked. None of your business. Poaching, Phyllis said behind him. Mara had not seen her arrive. Phyllis wore lipstick and a blouse patterned with blue flowers instead of her diner uniform. You closed the restaurant? Mara asked. Of course not. People can feed themselves for 20 minutes. That seems against your business model. Phyllis picked up a Grimes Golden and smelled it. Your grandmother kept tart ones under the counter for Maureen Hale. Who? She'll tell you. Maureen arrived 11 minutes later, a retired nurse with silver hair twisted into a knot and a canvas shopping bag over one arm. She looked past the fruit into the cabin. The shelves used to be fuller, she said. I'm working on it. Ruth would hide the best Grimes from Walter because he picked too early. Everybody says she fought with him. Everybody who stayed married that long fought. The trick was finding chores far enough apart. Maureen bit a thin slice Mara offered her. Her eyes closed. That's it, she said. Mara waited for an explanation. After my husband died, food tasted like wet paper. Ruth started leaving 6 of these on my porch every week. Never knocked, never asked me to be grateful. Maureen selected 12 apples, rejecting Mara's offer to take them without charge. She charged me then, she said. She knew pity spoils faster than fruit. By noon, the porch had become crowded enough that Mara stopped checking whether anyone would come and started worrying that she would run out. The scale's 3-ounce error caused an argument between Owen and Eli over whether customers were being cheated or enriched. Carla solved it by adding 1 extra pear to every bag. Denise came alone. She had tied her hair in a loose knot and wore old sneakers muddy at the toes. For several minutes, she moved among the tables without approaching Mara. Then, she picked out a bag of firm apples. "For pie," she said. "Those are better after storage. I can wait. You don't have to buy them." Denise put a $20 bill into Ruth's cash box. "Yes, I do." Mara counted change. "The farmhouse is beautiful," Denise said, looking uphill. "The bathroom tile is finally done. That's good. It doesn't feel good." Mara stopped counting. "Grant walks around listening for things to go wrong," Denise continued. "He slept downstairs 3 nights because he said the new grout needed monitoring. Maybe it gets lonely." Denise laughed, then covered her mouth. "Don't tell him I said anything. I won't. He wanted to come today. He knows the address." Denise took her change. "That's what I told him." She left with the apples against her chest. At 2, Mara still had customers. She closed at 3:10 after the last couple drove away, with a crate of pears tied into the back seat of a convertible. The grass was trampled. Empty baskets covered the tables. Ruth's cash box held $286 after Mara removed the starting change. She counted it twice. Owen waited for her reaction. "Well, I worked 6 months for less than my old distribution center paycheck. Today was 1 day. Today took 6 months." Carla closed the cash box. "Both things are true. The money would cover insurance, sprayer parts, fuel, bags, and part of the roof repair. It would not let Mara leave the diner. It would not make the orchard safe from weather or deer or her own mistakes. But strangers had followed her address down the lane and left carrying fruit. She paid Eli's receipt in cash, then filled 4 of Ruth's picking bags with apples and pears. "The deal was apples," he said. "The pears are interest." He took all 4. After Owen and Carla left, Eli helped Mara carry the tables inside. The cabin felt smaller with him in it, not crowded exactly, but aware. "You did well," he said. "We did $286. You keep answering a different question. I know how much everything costs. You know the price. That isn't the same." She sank onto the cot. Her lower back ached, and there was a raw spot beneath one heel. Eli sat beside her, leaving several inches between them. "When did you eat?" "I had an apple. That's inventory." Phyllis brought biscuits. "When?" Mara tried to remember. Eli went to the little refrigerator, found mustard and water, and shut it again. "I've been busy. You're always busy. That's how this gets done. That's how you get to be Walter." She looked at him. He did not take it back. "You work until somebody has to make you sit down," he said. "You give everything away as proof you belong here. Then you get angry because nobody notices what it cost. I sold the fruit. I'm not talking about fruit. Then don't talk like you know me. I know you tried to work after staying up all night in a freeze. I know you won't let Owen buy a hose without turning it into debt. I know you're sitting here bleeding into your shoe because customers came to your address and you think resting would make them wrong." Mara's eyes filled. "I can't lose this. You can lose yourself and keep the cabin. Would that count?" The question hurt because she had no quick answer. Eli leaned forward, forearms on his knees. "Your grandfather asked them not to let you disappear into the work. Owen told you?" "No." Carla heard Walter say the same thing a dozen times. Mara laughed bitterly. "Everybody knew except me. Maybe you knew. Maybe you call it something else." The cabin light caught the scar through his eyebrow. Mara reached toward it before deciding to, then stopped. Eli turned his face into her hand. The kiss was quiet and tasted faintly of pear. It lasted only a few seconds before Mara pulled back, startled by how much the room had changed. "I'm still mad at you," she said. "You should eat first. That was not romantic." I brought 4 bags of food. He made sandwiches from diner biscuits, cheese Carla had left in a cooler, and thin slices of apple that kept sliding out. Mara ate too. When Eli left, the orchard was dark. He stopped at the chain, got out of his truck, and waited while Mara locked it behind him. Up at the farmhouse, Grant stood alone on the back porch. Mara could not see his expression. He raised one hand. This time, she raised hers back. The wave did not become peace. It became a habit of acknowledgement. Grant lifted 2 fingers from the steering wheel when he passed the chain. Mara nodded if she saw him. Neither crossed the distance. The orchard kept requiring more immediate things. Pears gave way to early apples, then to fruit that needed cool nights before its flavor came right. Luis bought 4 boxes for his restaurant and sent back a photograph of sliced apples arranged beneath roasted pork. Mara stared at the photograph, pleased and vaguely offended that he had made her fruit look too elegant to eat. The next Saturday opening brought less money than the first and twice as many questions. People wanted cider. They wanted apple butter. They wanted to pick their own fruit, bring dogs, reserve bushels, and know whether Mara took credit cards. "I take cash," she said. A woman held up her phone. "Your sign online says cards." "What sign online?" By the following week, Mara had a card reader, 3 online reviews, and a complaint from someone who had driven down Orchard Lane on Tuesday and found the cabin closed. Phyllis read the complaint aloud at the diner. "Unclear hours, pretty trees. 3 stars. I wasn't open. Customer drove 12 miles. I was pouring his coffee." Phyllis considered this. Charge more. Mara gave up 1 weekday shift instead. The decision frightened her enough that she nearly asked for it back before leaving the diner. On her first free morning, she slept until 8, woke in a panic, and ran outside, convinced fruit had been falling unattended for hours. Eli found her beneath the stayman wearing 1 boot and carrying a picking bag backward. "You're resting well," he said. "Don't start." He turned the bag around without comment. Mara learned to accept help in units she could survive. Owen mowed on Saturdays. Carla handled the cash box during busy hours and insulted anyone who squeezed fruit too hard. Eli repaired the orchard ladder, then refused to let Mara call it part of the sprayer agreement. Phyllis delivered 2 trays of biscuits one Saturday and stayed to sell them, though she kept every dollar and announced this repeatedly. "I'm supporting you," she said, not becoming foolish. With the first month's sales, Mara paid for proper flashing around the chimney and the worst section of roof. The roofer offered installments for the rest. On the day he removed the tarp, Mara stood inside during a hard rain and watched the ceiling. No drops struck the bucket. She left it in place for another week. The farmhouse above her changed more visibly. Fresh white paint brightened the siding. Denise hung dark green shutters and filled the porch with new furniture, too pale for muddy work clothes. The blue dumpster vanished, replaced by landscaping stones and a row of trim boxwoods. Owen stopped referring to it as home. "Grant wants to list it on weekends," he said one evening while sorting apples at the cabin table. "Rent it? Eventually? He says it should pay for itself. What do you say?" "I say I didn't inherit half a hotel." Mara turned an apple, checking for bruises. "You wanted half a farmhouse. I wanted Grandpa's house. Grandpa isn't in it." Owen looked toward the photograph of Walter and Ruth. "Neither is Grant half the time. He walks around with a notebook making lists. Denise said he listens for problems. He found one. Me." The brothers had begun communicating through estimates, receipts, and notes left on the kitchen counter. Owen objected to Grant replacing Walter's scarred dining table. Grant accused Owen of confusing neglect with history. Denise moved the new table into the room before either man agreed, then spent a week insisting she had not chosen sides. Mara listened without offering to mediate. It felt unnatural. Then it felt restful. The harvest supper was Grant's idea. He came to the cabin on a Sunday afternoon, carrying a printed invitation. Heavy cream paper announced the Bell family harvest gathering beneath a watercolor picture of a barn that looked nothing like theirs. "Denise ordered too many," he said. Mara read the date. "That's my last orchard Saturday. The gathering starts at 5. I'll still be cleaning up. You'll have time." "For what?" Grant glanced toward the crates stacked beside the wall. "We thought you could bring cider, a few pies, maybe set up some of Grandma's things on the porch." "Which porch?" "The house." "Why would Grandma's orchard things be on the farmhouse porch?" "So people can see them. They can see them here." Grant's patience tightened. The invitation's already gone out. Aunts, cousins, neighbors, people who haven't been here since the funeral. Then they know where the farmhouse is. "We're trying to bring everybody together." Mara set the invitation on Ruth's table. "Who's cooking?" "Denise is handling most of it." "We're getting barbecue." She thought you could make the desserts because you have the apples. I don't make pies. You work at a diner. Phyllis makes pies. Then ask Phyllis. Mara laughed. Grant did not. How much cider? She asked. I don't know. 40 people. I have to pay to press it. Bottles cost money. We're family. So does the press. I paid to fix the road after your customers tore up the shoulder. I didn't ask you to. No. You don't ask anybody for anything. You just make sure we can see you refusing help. Mara looked at him. Is that what this invitation is? Help? It's dinner. It's a photograph of your house with my work arranged around it. Grant's face reddened. It is our house. Yours and Owen's. It belongs to this family. So does the orchard when you want free cider. He stepped back from the table. You know what? Forget it. I didn't say I wouldn't come. You've made it clear. I said, I'm not supplying 40 people for free and spending the night serving them. Nobody asked you to serve. You asked me to set up, bring cider, bring pies, and put Grandma's things on display. At what point do I sit down? Grant stared at her. That was answer enough. Come to the farmhouse as my sister, he said. For once, stop treating everything like a transaction. Mara's voice lowered. You handed me a key and changed the locks before Grandpa was buried. We're back to that. We never left it. He looked around the cabin, the clean sink, repaired windows, shelves of stamped bags, Ruth's records protected behind a clear panel Owen had mounted over the wall. You got what you wanted, he said. Mara almost answered. Then she saw that he believed it. In Grant's mind, the lighted cabin and selling fruit had retroactively made the way she received them acceptable. I got what I worked for, she said. That isn't the same. Grant left the invitation on the table. Mara did attend to one part of his request. She called Phyllis and ordered 2 pies. For the farmhouse? Phyllis asked. No. For me. How many forks? Mara looked at the date again. The final orchard Saturday would also mark the end of the first season and the beginning of pruning plans, roof payments, and another year of uncertainty. Maybe 12, she said. Then 2 pies won't do. The supper at 118 Bell Orchard Lane began as a thank you meal for the people who had worked beside her. Carla added Joe because Joe had sent customers. Joe added Luis because he had bought fruit. Phyllis informed Mara that Curtis would come, whether invited or not, if pie was involved. Owen asked if he could bring one of the farmhouse folding tables. Will Grant know? Mara said. Yes. Then bring it. Eli built a long table from boards laid over sawhorses. Denise sent a box of white cloth napkins through Owen with no note. Mara almost sent them back. Instead, she washed them and discovered faint embroidered apples at one corner. Grant's gathering and Mara's supper grew toward each other without touching. Cars turned into the farm on that Saturday afternoon and had to choose. The farmhouse drive was marked by cream balloons tied to the mailbox. Orchard Lane was marked by Mara's weathered sign bearing the separate address. Most relatives went uphill. Customers came down. Mara sold the last pears, 2 crates of staymans, and every bag of Grimes she had stored. Maureen Hale brought back one of Ruth's old canning jars, filled with late asters. Luis arrived with a pan of roasted vegetables nobody had asked him to stack. Phyllis carried 4 pies and complained about the road. At 4:30, Owen walked down from the farmhouse wearing a clean blue shirt. You're early, Mara said. I'm staying. She looked past him. Music had begun uphill. Through the trees, she could see figures moving across the farmhouse porch. Grant knows? He knows I was coming to help. That's not what I asked. Owen met her eyes. He knows where I'll be eating. Something in Mara loosened. She handed him a stack of plates. Then earn it. They strung lights from the porch to 2 apple trees. Eli lit a fire in an iron ring beyond the grass. The repaired cabin kitchen could not handle everything, so dishes covered every surface. Barbecue Joe brought from town, Carla's potatoes, Luis's vegetables, Phyllis's pies, and a pot of beans Owen nearly dropped when the bottom handle came loose. Mara had pressed 8 gallons of cider. She carried 1 jug uphill before the meal began. Grant stood on the farmhouse porch beside the new front door. Through the open rooms behind him, Mara saw white tablecloths, polished floors, and flower arrangements tall enough to prevent conversation. I brought this, she said. He looked at the jug. For dinner. 1 gallon? It's what I can give. His jaw tightened. Keep it. Denise appeared behind him. Grant. No. She made her point. Mara set the jug on the porch floor. I came as your sister for 30 seconds. I have people waiting. So do I. Then we both have somewhere to be. His gaze went past her toward the orchard lights. Owen picked your table. He picked where he wanted to eat. It's the same thing. Mara looked at the decorated rooms. Only if you make it one. She went back down the hill. They ate after dark. 12 people became 16 when several customers stayed, and 2 of Walter's old neighbors followed the lights. No one sat according to family rank. Carla took the head of the table because she arrived at the chair first. Curtis complained the cider was cloudy and drank 4 glasses. Mara sat between Eli and Owen. For once, she did not serve while everyone else ate. Owen refilled plates. Eli cut pie. Phyllis slapped his hand when his slices came out uneven. Through the cabin window, Mara could see the farmhouse glowing uphill. Cars began leaving before 9. The orchard supper lasted longer. People washed dishes in tubs on the porch and packed leftovers into mismatched containers. Maureen stood beneath the address plate telling Denise, who had come down alone just before dessert, how Ruth used to weigh apples with her thumb secretly resting on the scale. She cheated me for years, Maureen said fondly. Denise sat at the edge of the porch holding a slice of pie. She did not explain why she had left the farmhouse. Near 10, only Owen, Eli, Carla, Phyllis, Denise, and 2 neighbors remained. Laughter moved through the cabin. The windows fogged from bodies and dishwater. Mara was drying Ruth's old enamel cup when headlights swept across the orchard. A pickup stopped at the chain. No one moved at first. Then the truck door slammed. Grant came down the lane on foot, carrying the cream invitation crushed in one hand. He stopped outside the cabin windows and looked in at Owen washing dishes. Denise seated beside Carla, Eli repairing the loose handle on the bean pot, and Mara standing at Ruth's sink. The front of his shirt was streaked with barbecue sauce. His tie hung from his pocket. He looked less like the owner of the farmhouse than a man who had misplaced the evening. Mara stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind her. You took my wife, he said. Denise has a car. You took Owen. Owen has a car too. Grant looked past her toward the table beneath the lights. You knew what you were doing. Yes, Mara said. I was feeding the people who helped me. We helped you. Sometimes. His face folded around the word as though it had struck him. From inside came a burst of laughter. Then Phyllis telling someone to stop drying clean plates. Grant looked at the level address plate above Mara's head. You made a separate family, he said. No, you made a separate address. The night went still between the 2 houses. Mara opened the cabin door. You can come in, she said, if you can come in as my brother, not as the man who owns the hill. Grant looked through the open door. Denise had risen from her chair. Owen stood at the sink with a plate in one hand. Nobody called Grant inside. Nobody looked away either. He could have stepped across the threshold. Instead, he smoothed the crumpled invitation against his thigh. I'll see you at home, he told Denise. Then he walked back up Orchard Lane. Mara stood on the porch until his shape disappeared beyond the lights. The rejection hurt, which embarrassed her. She had expected anger, perhaps even wanted it. She had not expected to feel the empty place where he might have sat. When she returned inside, conversation restarted too brightly. Phyllis pointed to the pie table. Last slice is becoming a public safety issue. Owen picked up the dish towel. I'll take it. You've had 2. I'm grieving. For what? My brother's personality. Denise laughed, then cried. She covered her face so quickly Mara almost pretended not to see. Carla moved over on the cot. Denise sat beside her and accepted a clean napkin from Phyllis without explanation. Nobody repaired the evening. They finished it. After the last car left, Eli stacked chairs while Owen carried trash to the bin. Denise walked uphill alone, the orchard lights catching the white apples embroidered on her napkin. Mara waited until she reached the farmhouse porch. You okay? Eli asked. No. Useful answer. I'm learning. He kissed her forehead and took the last folding table apart. The 1 gallon of cider remained on the farmhouse porch overnight. In the morning, Mara found the empty jug washed and set beside the chain. There was no note. Grant did not speak to her for 3 weeks. He spoke around her through Owen and sent 1 text when a windstorm tore loose a section of the cabin gutter. Gutters down on north side. Mara replied, I live here. After 10 minutes, she added, thank you. His answer came 2 hours later. Welcome. That was the extent of their peace. The chain remained locked. Grant never asked for a key again. Owen kept working his marked Saturdays, though harvest ended and the orchard entered its bare, untidy season. He helped Mara clear fallen fruit, clean the sprayer, and protect young trunks from deer. When Grant wanted him at the farmhouse, Owen answered according to what he wanted, rather than whoever asked first. It made both siblings angry sometimes. It also made him less apologetic. The farmhouse dispute sharpened after Grant showed Owen projected rental income. Owen refused to sign anything. Grant accused him of wanting an expensive museum. Owen accused Grant of polishing Walter out of his own home. They compromised badly. The farmhouse remained a family house through winter, while Denise rented it for one weekend in spring to a couple attending a wedding. Grant spent the entire weekend in Owen's apartment checking the security camera until Owen unplugged the router. Mara heard the story from Denise, who came to the cabin for apples after the last stored stamens had softened enough for sauce. "You don't have to keep buying," Mara said. "Yes, I do." Still, Denise considered it. "Maybe not, but I like these." She paid anyway. Winter made the cabin honest. With leaves gone, Mara could see every wound in the orchard and every lit room in the farmhouse. Cold found gaps around the repaired windows. The water line froze twice. Her roof installment came due during the diner's slowest month, and she paid it with $11 left in the cabin envelope. She did not regret refusing Grant's offer. She regretted it on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, she remembered why. Eli came for supper 2 nights a week and never arrived without knocking, even after Mara gave him permission to walk in. He kept a clean work shirt on a hook beside Walter's coat. They argued about tools, mustard, and whether a meal containing cheese and crackers qualified as cooking. When Mara worked until her hands cramped, Eli did not take the pruners from her. He asked what would happen if she stopped for 1 hour. At first, she gave him reasons. Eventually, she stopped. Carla helped her rewrite the orchard map in a notebook that could survive being carried outdoors. Ruth's wall remained untouched behind its clear panel. Mara added her own records on new paper. Pruning dates, bloom stages, frost damage, fruit counts, what sold, what rotted, and which customers had asked for what. She wrote in pencil. On the first warm day, Mara and Owen dug out the Arkansas black stump. The roots resisted for hours. Dirt filled their boots. Owen broke the handle of Grant's shovel and offered to hide the evidence. "It's his favorite shovel," Mara said. "He has a favorite shovel? He's Walter's grandson." They planted a young black Oxford in the old space. A variety Carla said kept well and tasted better after winter. "It isn't a replacement," Owen said while firming the soil. "I know." Grant offered to buy the tree. Mara stopped. "I told him no," Owen added. "Then I thought that wasn't mine to answer." "It's fine. You sure?" She looked at the slender trunk. "Yes." Owen poured the last bucket of water around it. "He asks about you. He has my number. I tell him that." Spring returned with red tips, green leaves, and more blossoms than Mara trusted. When a frost warning came, she watered the dry ground and covered the smallest trees. She did not try to cover all of them. At midnight, she went inside and slept for 3 hours. The temperature stayed at 31. Most blossoms survived. By summer, the cabin's water system worked again. Owen rebuilt the old orchard well pump, while Eli replaced the rusted pressure tank. Mara paid them both. Owen in pizza because he refused cash, Eli in actual money because he accused her of using fruit as emotional currency. The restored sink coughed the first time Mara opened the faucet. Then clear water ran into Ruth's porcelain basin. Mara put her hands under it and laughed. The orchard still did not make her rich. It made 6 good months and 6 worried ones. She sold fresh fruit from the porch, filled Luis's small weekly orders, and began a list of customers who wanted harvest bags reserved. Some weeks the numbers worked. Some weeks a mower belt, plumbing valve, or insurance payment consumed whatever progress she had made. The separate address made the system possible in ordinary ways. Fruit boxes arrived at the cabin instead of the farmhouse. Restaurant drivers collected orders without hunting for her. Bills, permits, bank statements, and Christmas cards came to the mailbox bearing her name. When people searched the address, the cabin appeared rather than the White House uphill. Mara was not somebody staying behind her brother's farm. She lived at 118 Bell Orchard Lane. Near the second harvest, she reduced her diner schedule to weekends. A month later, she told Phyllis she needed to leave entirely. Phyllis continued filling ketchup bottles. You making enough? She asked. Most months. That's not what I asked. It's what I have. Phyllis looked at her over the glasses hanging from her neck. You think being scared means it's a bad decision? Sometimes. Sometimes it means you can count. Mara picked at the edge of her apron. Are you going to tell me not to go? No. I'm deciding whether you're allowed back when hail ruins your grand agricultural vision. And only if you stop putting 4 ice cubes in Curtis's juice. Curtis, listening from the counter, said, She does it on purpose. I know, Phyllis replied. Mara's last shift ended without ceremony. Phyllis gave her the apron because the strings were stretched to fit her. Joe left a $20 tip on a $6 breakfast. Curtis gave her nothing and appeared at the orchard the following Saturday to buy a full bushel. The second harvest was larger, though not dramatically so. The stayman bore well. Pears were lighter. The overpruned tree finally produced 6 apples among a determined forest of upright shoots. Eli bit into one. Well, Mara asked. It tastes panicked. She took the apple from him and ate the other side. Owen arrived most picking mornings. He parked by the barn and walked down in full view of the farmhouse. Sometimes Grant stood on the porch. Sometimes he was not there. Mara stopped looking. One late August morning, someone knocked on the cabin door before she had finished her coffee. Not called from the lane. Not entered because the place used to belong to Walter. Knocked. Mara opened the door. Grant stood on the porch holding a faded canvas picking bag. The strap had been repaired with black thread, and Walter's initials showed near the buckle. I found this in the barn, he said. Mara took the lower edge but did not pull it from his hands. Grandpa's, yeah. Behind Grant, morning sun moved between the orchard rows. The address plate above him had begun rusting around the new screws. You could have left it with Owen, she said. I could have. Grant looked different without the farmhouse framed behind him, older, less certain. His work shirt was faded, and mud marked one knee. He glanced through the doorway at Ruth's crate, the photograph, and the records covering Mara's side of the wall. I should have come in that night, he said. Yes, I was angry. I know. I thought you were trying to make me choose. You were already choosing. He nodded. I know. Mara waited. She had learned not to rescue people from the silence where their next honest sentence belonged. Grant rubbed his thumb across Walter's initials. I kept thinking if you sold, I could fix how it happened, he said. Give you more than the place was worth. Make it fair afterward. It wouldn't have been. No, and it's worth more than you thought. I don't mean money, Mara looked at him. Grant's eyes shifted toward the trees. Grandpa asked us to help you. Owen told you? Yes. I heard work. I didn't hear help. You heard what was convenient? Yes. The word cost him something, not enough to erase anything, enough to be noticed. He held out the picking bag. I don't expect this to fix it, he said. Good. Grant almost smiled. From the north row came Owen's voice arguing with Eli about whether a ladder leaned or the earth did. A pear dropped somewhere in the grass. Grant looked toward the sound, then back at Mara. Where do you want me to start? She took Walter's bag, opened the strap, and handed it back to him. Stamens, she said. North row. Twist before you pull, and don't drop them. Grant slid the strap over his shoulder. Mara stepped onto the porch and closed her front door behind her. Then she walked beside her brother down Orchard Lane.